Here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dean Vallone. I'm the Lower Allen Township Lower Allen Township Board of Commissioners President. Excuse me. I'm calling this meeting of August 22nd, 2022 to order. Proof of publication is available for this meeting. We begin our meetings with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Let's pray. We pray this day to give thanks for all the many blessings bestowed upon our township. Watch over us who are entrusted with the administration of this township. Create in us the earnest desire to serve faithfully and permit us to experience the joys of noble service completed for our residents. Encourage cooperation from those who are served and from those who serve. Help us to use every willing service and every effort put forth for good government. Heavenly Father, we ask your guidance to help us as commissioners to make the right decisions. We ask that you aid our staff as they perform the daily tasks of running our township, and we request that you be by our first responders as they protect our residents and see that they return home safe at the end of each day. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Again, welcome to our meeting, both those that are here joining us in person and for those that are joining us via the live stream on YouTube, welcome to you as well. I'm joined here this evening with all the commissioners, Commissioner Karen, down to my far left, Commissioner Black, Commissioner Kutz, and Commissioner Nagy. Commissioners, over the weekend, we received our packets and we received the minutes from the August 8th, 2022 regular meeting. And if you have any questions or concerns about the minutes, please make them known now, or any changes. And if none, I have one. And I just want to clarify something, and it would be under, here it is. It would have been under Community and Economic Development during the discussion post the Mounts Jewelers discussion, and it would be on page 4 of our minutes. It says, he also, and it was referring to me, I made comment after the discussion that he also reported meeting with the new owners and welcomed them to Lower Allen Township. I didn't watch the live stream back, but I certainly didn't mean that I met with them. I met them that night at the Planning Commission meeting. So if everybody will accept that correction. That's the only adjustment I would have. So commissioners, if there's no further discussion or any adjustments to the minutes that you would have, I'd be seeking a motion to approve the minutes as adjusted of August 8th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz. I have a second from Commissioner Black. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have 2 bid openings this evening. One is for the Beacon Hill Basin Retrofit Project, and one is for the Sheepford Basin Retrofit Project. Thank you, Aaron, for grabbing the letter opener for me. I am going to, we're going to start with the project that this envelope that came in is bid for, because they didn't note on the envelope which they were bidding for, and it could be both. So I'm going to start with this one, and then we'll go to that project if that works with everybody. Okay, this one, the inner envelope does say it's for the Sheepford Basin Retrofit Project. So we'll start with the Sheepford Basin Retrofit Project. The proposal is from Columbia Excavating LLC at 7398 Columbia Boulevard, Berwick, Pennsylvania, 18603. It's signed and look for a bid bond. Commissioner Black, would you double check that for me for the bid bond, please? There it is.
There is a bid
Okay,
bond.
I missed it. And there is a bid bond. And then, would you just go ahead and read the amount, please? Did you have it?
The bid amount is $76,068.62.
Okay.
76068.62.
And that was we're starting with the Sheepford Basin retrofit.
Yes.
And if you'll just go ahead and put this back with it and hand it over to the solicitor. We'll move on to the next one. We have one other proposal sent in for the Sheepford Basin retrofit project. It is from Stormwater Maintenance LLC, 913 Ridge Brook Road, Suite 302, Sparks, Sparks, Maryland, 21152. There is a bid bond attached. Just find the amount. The amount of the bid is $103,000 and no cents. $103,000. And those are the two proposals that we received for the Sheepford project, the Sheepford Basin retrofit. So, give everybody a second here, and then we'll move on to the Beacon Hill Basin retrofit project. This bid is from Aquatic Resource Restoration Company. And they are at 12506 Susquehanna Trail South, New Freedom, PA 17349. Back through. There it is. Bid bond is attached. And the total amount of the bid is $188,935. $188,935, and no change. And finally, the final bid we're opening this evening is from Stormwater Maintenance LLC. And that is also 913 Ridgebrook Road, Suite 302, Sparks, Maryland, 21152. And the bid bond is also attached to this. Okay. And the total bid is $162,000 and no cents. $162,000. That's an empty. And so once the solicitor gets all of those, we'll go ahead and officially close the bids for this evening. Moving on our agenda to audience participation. This is where on our agenda, if you're here to discuss an item that's on our agenda currently, now is the time to let us know. We'll take your name, and when they come to that item, and we'll invite you to participate in whatever capacity that you're here to participate in. So is there anyone here this evening to participate or talk about a particular item on our agenda? Yes, Janice Links. 13A for Ms. Links. Is there anyone else here this evening to talk about and participate in any item on our agenda? Yes, sir.
I would like to speak on the Crestman Manor subject.
Crestman Manor. And that is...
About the railroad at the mill.
There will be another opportunity in the meeting to just speak openly on that topic. Yep. This is generally items that are on our business agenda for this evening that are already scheduled for business. But we have another opportunity in here where you'll have the opportunity to speak freely about your concerns and issues, for sure. Is there anyone here that has a item on our agenda this evening that they would like to participate in? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. And when we get to 13A, Ms. Links, we'll have you come up. You've been with us before on some of these. You know what to do. Moving to our consent agenda, any commissioner, staff member, or anyone in attendance who would like to have an item on the consent agenda removed for further discussion can request so now. Is there a request for the removal of an item on the consent agenda?
Mr. President, move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Nagy, and I have a second from, a motion from Commissioner Kutz, and my second did come from Commissioner Nagy. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Under your president this evening, I'd be looking to accept the motion to approve or disapprove the adjudication prepared by the solicitor pursuant to the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2022-02, stormwater management. And just a reminder for the public's purpose, we took this up at our last meeting following a public hearing on this matter.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. President.
I have a motion from Commissioner Nagy.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Black. Is there any discussion on this motion? I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Next, I'd be seeking a motion to accept, the motion to enact ordinance 2022-02, stormwater management by implementing the requirements of the Cumberland County Stormwater Management Plan and Act 167, the Pennsylvania Stormwater Management Act as amended, by deleting Chapter 184 Stormwater Management Ordinance and by enacting a new Chapter 184 Stormwater Management Ordinance. And again, for the public's information, we are taking action on a matter relating to A on the agenda that we just took action on, which was part of the public hearing at the prior to the last meeting.
Mr. President, I would move to approve ordinance 2022-02, stormwater management, which is required by Cumberland County Stormwater Management Plan and Act 167.
I'll second that.
I have a motion. I don't need a second, Commissioner Karen, on this particular ordinance or this ordinance this evening. And I would ask the secretary to please take a roll call.
President Malone,
Aye.
Vice President Black,
Aye.
Commissioner Karen,
Aye.
Commissioner Fitz,
No.
Commissioner Nagy.
Aye.
Mr. President, if I may, now that the ordinance has been enacted, there's a procedure under Pennsylvania law where we can notice the public about the fact that this was adopted. We do the publication, and that keeps the appeals within a 30-day period. Since this is a matter involving land use, that's typically something that commissioners consider. Could put it on your agenda because we're not sure if you're going to approve it or not. But I'd recommend that action. Just need a separate motion to authorize the staff to make that notice, and that will be taken up at a later meeting, but we need to have that advertised. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So you're requesting, Mr. Solicitor, that we take some action to advertise for an additional ordinance?
No, sir.
Oh.
What you're doing is you're noticing the public that you've
Okay.
adopted this ordinance, but after that publication, then it gives a hard deadline for appeals. In other words, someone can't come back later and say that it was void ab initio. In other words, they have to have a substantive reason to say that the ordinance is invalid. But it creates a deadline for those appeals 30 days after publication. So it's something that we often do with a land use, and particularly with this stormwater that has township-wide and really county-wide and statewide implications. But it gives, again, a notice to interested people that you've taken this action.
Understood.
And Mr. President, I would make the motion to authorize the advertisement of the notice of enactment of ordinance 2022-02.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Karen, a second from Commissioner Nagy. Are there any questions, commissioners? The only question I would have, Mr. Solicitor, is understanding the rules, I suppose, as we call it from the legislature about agendas and things. Is that action appropriate tonight, given it wasn't
It
on our
is,
agenda?
because I don't see how you have an Act 65 violation, because if you folks had voted no, we couldn't have done this. So I think it's appropriate that now that you voted yes, that allows the staff to takes that additional action.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, commissioners? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. And just for the record, also I forgot to announce it prior to the solicitor jumping in. Number 8A, the motion, I'm sorry, 8B, the motion carried 4-1.
Correct.
And Commissioner Karen, I do apologize for kind of stepping over you there on that second.
No need for apology.
Moving on, our agenda, which would be 8C this evening, still under the president. I'd be looking to accept the motion to adopt Resolution 2022-R26. This is the hiring of Gregory A. Oben as a maintenance specialist for the Public Works Department effective August 23rd, 2022. And just again, we took this permission, so to speak, to have staff do this hiring at a prior meeting, or yes, a prior meeting.
Make a motion, Mr. President, for Resolution 2022-R-26.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Nagy, a second from Commissioner Kutz. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next is number 9 on our agenda. This is where any business pertinent to the township can be discussed by anybody in attendance. Discussions will be limited to around 10 minutes. And so what you do, ma'am, is you come to the podium and you just announce your name and your address so the recording secretary can record it, and then just talk to us.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Michelle Musser, and I live on Morningside Drive in Crestman Manor. I'm here to discuss the Norfolk Southern and the ABM mill problem that we have been thrust into. The trains, when I moved there in 1987, I didn't even know there was railroad tracks behind Crestman Manor. I never knew about them until late in 1992, when I was off work one day and I saw a train going literally right behind the houses across the street. They shake our homes at 2 o'clock in the morning. These trains are running pretty much 24/7 now, and they were told many years ago that they couldn't sit behind Crestman Manor and idle because of the diesel fumes, but they have started doing that again. They've also laid more track behind Crestman Manor, and I don't know if anyone is aware of that. I don't know if any study was done, a geologic study, to check on the ramifications of, this increased train traffic on our homes, our foundations. We're all sitting on limestone here. Recently, they've added what I call the cruise ship whistle, that they blow this whistle that sounds like a cruise ship, and the train moves 1 or 2 cars. They fill them with the flour or whatever they're doing, and then they blow the whistle again. I've sat outside and I've heard the trains pulling cars that it sounds like the brakes are on, that loud screeching noise. I timed it one day, it was 17 minutes. I couldn't hear my sister speaking to me over that noise. I don't think we should have to put up with that. It's ridiculous. The banging of the cars, there's a train that goes through anywhere from 10 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning. And he likes to zoom down through there and then slam on the brakes, and all the cars bang up against each other. It shakes our homes. And it's a horrific noise, and if you've never lived there and had to listen to it, you wouldn't like it very much. And I'm sure some of the people that are here to attest to the fact that it's ridiculous, and we'd like something done about it. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe have AEM put up a sound wall. Maybe talk to Norfolk Southern and stop the trains from 9 o'clock at night until 7 in the morning. But they run all night long, banging and carrying on, and we didn't ask for that mill either. And that thing is noisy in of itself. I don't know if anyone is aware of the train that just derailed in Coatesville while a woman was sitting on her porch. And by the way, the train was pulling flour. It slid across her backyard and through trees up into her swimming pool where her grandchildren were just swimming. That's happened twice to her in the last 2 years. Some of these people, these trains are less than 3 feet from their backyard line. That's not a very good thing. There's children, that's their backyard. So I just wanted to let you know that something has to be done. And you as our elected officials, I'm gonna hold you responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musser. Sir, would you like to come up and you would just state your name and your address and then talk about, I'm assuming, the same issue?
My name is Joseph Swank. My address is 3125 Morningside Drive. I'd like to say, Commissioner and neighbors, welcome. I'd like to comment on the noise about the railroad tracks behind Preston Manor. My family moved there in 1972. I was 3 years old. I slept through the trains. You get used to it. Once in a while, maybe you wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning when you're rolling over and it sounds like a thunderstorm. We have never had any shaking of our house. We've never had any structural damage from the railroad tracks. As a kid, we used to, unfortunately, play down by the railroad tracks and try and put a penny on to see. But where my house is located, we had the 11 and 15 access route. We have the access route literally right in our backyard, going through our side yard, back to the mill, back to JDK Catering. We hear the trucks with their air horns, everything. It's a part of, they were there when you moved in. All you had to do was ask neighbors who lived around there. And same as you would like a school to put your kids in school. What's this neighborhood like? This neighborhood has my next door neighbors who are 96, 97 years old. They've lived there all their life. You knew what you were buying into. To ask Norfolk Southern, to ask Lower Allen Township to do something about this noise problem or challenge. You knew what you were buying when you bought it. Same as if you bought an apartment in New York City. You knew you were gonna hear the honking of the taxis and etc. And I thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. You'll come to the podium and give your name and address and start.
Hello, I'm Victoria Caparella. I'm representing my parents, William and Flora Caparella. They live on Morningside Drive and South 31st Street. We were the first street They built their house there 70 years ago. We were the first street in Cressman Manor. We were about the 7th or 8th house that was being built, or built. And that was my childhood home. I go back there on occasions, not just occasions, I'm there daily, about 5 times a week. But during the evenings, I stay there on occasions and help my parents out. They're 99 years old. And when you move into a community, you find out what is around you. Those railroad tracks were there. That milling company was there. It may not have been ADM, but it was Macmillan Feed Mill. They were there before my parents built that house. As he said, that 11 and 15 entrance up was right in back of our house. That made noises as well, with all the heavy traffic and tractor trailers. Besides the railroads, there was also a lawn shop that was at the end of Morningside Drive. And during the day, they made noise, but you get used to it. Yes, I woke up when I stayed at my parents' house, and 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, but it's normal. I was used to that growing up. During the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when the economy was better, you heard that traffic all night, train traffic all night, and you got used to it. And for somebody to not know what they're buying into, that a railroad track was right there, the milling place was right there. You know, that's on them as far as I'm concerned. I would just suggest getting earplugs. I mean, this is, it's life, it's part of life. Where I live now, I hear train tracks, and it's because there's a crossroads there, and they're going across the highway or the street, and they have to blow their horn. So that happens in the early mornings. But what I am here is, to say is, like I said, that house was built 70 years ago. We put up with it for 70 years, and they're still putting up with it. You have to get used to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to make public comment? I guess particularly on this issue first? And if, feel free to, no. And just come to the podium and give your name and address.
My name is Joyce White, and I live at 2720 Morningside Drive with my sister and my 93-year-old mother. My parents bought this house in 1968, and we live there, and we're right behind the mill. And it is awful. Last night I was up from after midnight till after 1, because every time I tried to relax, bam, and the house would shake, the windows would rattle. It is awful. I mean, and it hasn't been this bad all these years. I mean, we used to not have air conditioning, and we could sleep with the windows up. Well, thank God for central air, because we can't have the windows open. So we have to get no fresh air, except to go outside, but we used to sit on the back porch, a screened-in porch, and watch TV in the summertime. We can't do that anymore. We just can't enjoy the property like we used to. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening to make public comment on any topic?
Hi, I'm Sharon Spears, I'm at 2910 Morningside. I wasn't gonna say anything. My property is on the railroad track, it backs right to it at one point, going through the records. Part of what is the railroad property now was part of the parcel that I bought. So I know that the train tracks have been there for a long time. I like trains in general, I like trains, I think they're cool. I didn't have any problem with buying a house where the train track was right behind it, and I've been there almost 6 years now. I don't know what it was like before, other than the last 5 or 6 years, but I can tell you, the first night I was in that house, 2 a.m., boom, really loud. Like I thought someone was breaking into my house. So I just want you to know it's not made up. It really is crazy. It's crazy because your house does shake, and it sounded like I have a storm door. It sounded like somebody breaking in through the door. It took me a while. I still am I do get woken by the trains. I know they have business to do. I'm glad there's business here. It would be nice if they didn't have to do that at 2 a.m. If there's anything you can do, just to kind of let us sleep at night, that would be great. That's really all I'm asking for.
Thank you. I would say at this point, commissioners, we'll have asked some questions, but if it's okay with the commissioners, I'm assuming there's already been some complaints that have come into staff, and I would like to at least know from the manager or Mr. Eby, maybe what, from our perspective, if we're doing anything or what our position is on this right now.
So I'll start and then turn it over to John. I did speak to Ms. Musser on the phone a couple times about this and have written correspondence to the general manager of ADM Milling. I did not personally get a response, but I understand that the GM stopped in and spoke to John out front, so I'll just let John go ahead and talk about that discussion.
Good evening. So I have some history with the property from complaints years ago. This has been a long time lull till we had any other complaints. The mill's in Camp Hill Borough, and the railroad is regulated by the Public Utility Commission. But I did speak with Drew Stewart. He's the plant manager. He came in maybe a week or so ago and asked if he should be at tonight's meeting. I said that there was, at the present time, no regular agenda item, but that the residents were welcome to come in under the item at which they have spoken. I told him I can't tell you yes or no they will be here or when they'll be here, but I advised it would be good if they could provide the manager with some written answer regarding his letter about the railroad activity. Mr. Stewart came in today to ask if it was on the agenda. I said it was not, but again, that it's possible that the residents will be here tonight as opposed to a future meeting. And he reiterated that they don't have control over the Norfolk Southern Railroad. The rail cars in question are hopper cars that contain flour, so it's flour being brought into the plant. And if the residents would want to clarify if my assumption is wrong, my assumption is it's when they are coupling cars or when they're pulling away, there's a lot of train noise from the banging of the couplers, the cars together. The boat whistle, is that random times all day long?
It's on certain days of the week, but I can't nail it down.
Okay, but is it during the daytime also?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that I'll check into because I've been hearing that noise here in the office because it's coming from that direction of the mill, and I was wondering what it was.
Imagine that being in your back.
Okay, so I will tell the folks that the mill manager said they have a switching engine that moves 1 or 2 cars around, but Norfolk Southern moves the bulk trains. And then obviously there are through trains that, that is the old Cumberland Valley Railroad that predates the Civil War. So the railroad's been there, as several people mentioned, it way predates the neighborhood. The mill might or might not predate the homes. I remember the mill from back in the early 60s, but it was much smaller back then. So I believe they're processing more of a 24/7 now than they used to. They have trucks bringing grain in, they have trucks taking flour out, and they have rail cars bringing flour in. So that's what I can tell you. And, I didn't dissuade the manager from coming in tonight, but I had to be honest and say it is not on the regular meeting agenda. it might or might not come up tonight. So again, I encouraged him to provide Manager Vino with a written reply, and I'll call him about the boat horn, because I've been wondering what that was too. And maybe that's something they can control, but I believe they can't control Norfolk Southern Railroad, and there might be an ability to file a complaint with the PUC. We wouldn't have a township ordinance applying because A, it's not in our jurisdiction municipality-wise, and B, it's not in our jurisdiction because it's a Norfolk Southern PUC issue. So that's what I know.
Understood. I know Commissioner Kutz has some comments, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. President, thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's important to hear. I appreciate hearing from everyone. And I think both sides can be right that, you might have known about the tracks, but also the noise can still be annoying. So I think from our perspective, you have the right to quiet use and enjoyment of your property, which doesn't mean completely quiet under the law, but we can certainly do what we can. Typically in the past, that means for us, unfortunately, it's a township. It's the easiest place to have your voice heard. It's also sometimes a harder place to have your voice amplified. So we in the past with issues with Norfolk Southern have filed complaints with the PUC. We'll write letters. We'll do all that we can within our jurisdiction. As you heard from Mr. Eby, there are some issues with municipal lines and everything, but I think certainly an effort can be made to at least make it a little better for you, or at least see what we can do. And that doesn't take much staff resource or time to do that. So. My couple of questions, and Mr. Eby, you're probably the best person to answer this. With it being a utility regulated by the PUC, I'm assuming our noise ordinance wouldn't account for it. I mean, I hear the train from my home at all hours of the night as well. So I'm assuming there's nothing we can do. My question then would be, there's discussion about quiet zones at crossings. Is it a possibility to say, okay, at the mill, it's a quiet zone between hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. where, is that anything that we could explore?
I don't believe so. Quiet zones deal with the Doppler effect of the whistle carrying on, and quiet zone means that there are localized whistles or warnings to motorists at the crossing that project down the road, as opposed to the engineer having to activate the whistle. Right. And I can hear it at my house, you can hear it where you live, and we're not that close. I'm not that close, you're a lot closer.
Right.
And I hear it at my house in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So it's not the whistle, it is the banging of rail cars. Sure. So I don't think quiet zone applies.
And then, Mr. Eby, I'm also correct that a sound wall or barrier would also not be our purview. With that, since I guess it would be encroaching on the railroad right away, that would be a state would have to do something if there was any way to stop the amplification of the sound into Cressman Manor.
I don't know what entity other than the railroad would install a sound barrier, and I would seriously doubt that they would incur that expense.
Is that something we could inquire to them? Understanding folks, of course, that they're likely to say we're not going to expense that, but go ahead if you have a comment, Mr. President, that's okay.
Yes.
I would like to step back again, just slight. We had deer that run through the field beside our house, right by the access road. They go down towards railroad tracks and that to feed, and a sound barrier, in my opinion, would endanger them and the wildlife that lives around.
Okay.
I understand the thought, but again, my neighbors may not agree, but I think that would almost be more detrimental than helpful.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. And not living back there, I mean, I've been back there plenty of times driving, knocking doors, but haven't been to your backyard, so I appreciate that. So it sounds to me, Mr. President, I'd welcome other commissioners to chime in, but our best foot forward would just be possibly continue that communication with the plant, maybe loop in Camp Hill Borough on the issues we're having, and try to sit down with them and inform the PUC of the kind of lateness of the hour with the noises. And I don't want to tell you we can make miracles happen here. So just as a local municipality dealing with a state regulated entity, I think we'll run into some barriers, but as you mentioned, as your elected representatives, it's our duty and responsibility to try to do our best for you. So I don't want to make you false promises that we can't deliver on, but I can tell you those are the steps, in my opinion and experience, that we can take. And if staff disagrees or has other actions they can take, that would be welcomed as well. But I at least want to give you my 2 cents that I think that's probably our next course. And certainly please keep in contact with us as you continue to have issues, and staff always keeps us informed on these things as well. So we'll continue to monitor progress. All of our contact information is available on the website as well. So if you have any personal individual questions, we'd be happy to speak with anyone as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner.
I have a question, Mr. President.
Commissioner Black.
John, I'll start with you. Is ADM a 24-hour operation?
Yes,
But they're in Camp Hill Borough.
yes.
Do you know, and Ms. Musser may be able to answer this better, has there been a recent train traffic increase on the train tracks?
I don't know.
Yes, there was considerable increase. Like I said, I moved there in 1987. There was one train that went through.
Ms. Musser, could you come back up to the podium? Thank you.
The folks at home can't hear you.
I'll let them know. Yes, when I moved there in 1987, there was one train that went through a week, one per week, and it was during the day when most people were at work. The increase in the traffic has been since, I'm just trying to think. Well, I retired 5 years ago.
About 5 years.
Yeah, it's been about 5 years, that there has been a substantial increase, and I don't know anything about your end of the road, but when you said the deer go down to the tracks, some of these people in here, these tracks are right level with their yard.
I understand.
So for, and the one lady that spoke about the deer, that lives right in front of the mill, she has 7 deer that come out and feed in her front yard every day. I don't think they're gonna be impacted by it because there's all the woods down at that end of the street. So I don't think the deer are gonna be impacted at all. In fact, Rick, he videotapes them in his backyard. Because when the trains are running, they're running. So.
Now, Ms. Musser, did I hear you say that there has been additional trackage installed recently?
Yes, about 5 years ago.
How many rail lines, how many 2-rail tracks are there now?
Rick, you can answer that better. 3? There are 3.
3?
There was one when I moved in.
I know, I only know 2.
Well, you're at the other end of the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Rick allowed?
Just come up and state your name and your address, please.
Rick Appleby, 2816 Morningside. There are 2 sidings for ADM and 1 Norfolk Southern. ADM has their own switcher that they play with their railroad cars on those 2 sidings. Norfolk Southern delivers and picks up. And my experience of all the noise in the wee hours of the morning and at night is Norfolk Southern doing switching. They have a switching yard up the Charms down behind the movie theater in that area. And they're switching cars to the different sidings up there. I think it's rebuilding trains, I don't know. But they back the train up into their siding, disconnect cars, switch them to different sidings, pull the train forward, add cars, and during this process, some engineers are not too professional, in my opinion. They really slam the cars together. Others gently push the train back. So I think it's a personnel issue that or a lack of courtesy issue?
Well, when you say there are three tracks,
Behind my house, yes. As I said, 2 of them service just the mill, for them to move their cars to and from the dumping.
and the third one you refer to as a Norfolk Southern line, correct?
Correct.
Does that mean it's a through line that carries traffic not only for ADM?
It's the way ADM's cars are delivered, but also further down the line, there's a place that makes styrofoam insulation. It brings material into them, not nearly as much material as Norfolk Southern does.
Okay.
And at times I see military transports going through, I guess, to Letterkenny, not too often, once a month, twice a month, so it is a through line too.
Okay. John, is this the through line he's referring to, is this what they call the Lurgan line?
No, that is, I believe, the former Reading line that is behind our building here. That's the Lurgan branch. That's,
Okay, all right.
that was Pennsylvania, that was Reading. That was originally Cumberland Valley Railroad. That was originally, I think, the something Harrisburg and something Railroad. They go way back.
Okay, and Tom, our manager, you say you've had correspondence with Norfolk Southern?
No, I've had correspondence with ADM Milling. I should say, well, I wrote them a letter. They did not correspond back.
That they do not what?
They did not correspond back with me.
But it was my understanding that John had met with the manager.
I met with the manager and suggested that he write me a response.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't done that yet.
That is correct. I think he only met with him last week, so the guy hasn't had a chance yet, but
May I request that when you hear from him, if you hear from him, you inquire as to whether it's necessary to have nighttime deliveries?
okay. They are a 24-hour operation, so.
I was
And
already told that.
I believe he made the comment to John, maybe I dreamed this, but I thought he said that they can't halt operations overnight.
That is correct.
So the conversation has been had. And we can ask him to come to a meeting in the future to discuss the board and let the residents know in case they want to come and speak to him directly. But as John has mentioned, they're under the jurisdiction of the Pennsylvania Utility Commission. As you're well aware, we've had issues with Norfolk Southern and other railroads in the past where they just kind of ignore us because they don't really fall under our laws. So the conversation would have to be with Norfolk Southern to ask them nicely to stop, to talk to their staff and have them stop banging into cars. But I don't know how far that would go. The next step would obviously be a complaint to the Pennsylvania Utility Commission, which residents can make those, they can file those complaints as well.
But it seems to me that there's a bunch of things going on that could be caused by Norfolk Southern and collectively with the personnel at the milling company as well. So I think it's worthwhile to still talk to the milling folks and find out, anything it sounds like shaved off of there would be good. And if it's a matter of just some clumsiness working their ADM portion, and that where Norfolk Southern doesn't have those operations inside the plant area, perhaps on those other two tracks, maybe asking them nicely, maybe shaving anything off at this one point would probably help. So I think it's probably better that we just understand what's going on. And it sounds like the conversation with the manager or have an explanation from him to our manager is a good place to start. And I think that at this point, I don't think we're going to get any answers until we understand it from their perspective. But Mr. Eby has some more comments.
Well, I just wanted to let the concerned residents know I have an extra copy of the Drew Stewart's plant manager business card. If there's a designee from the group, they certainly may have this if they want to ask any questions directly of the manager.
Good.
Good idea.
I would encourage anyone to pick that business card up. Take it along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good discussion, and it sounds like we have a little bit of action as far as reaching out and trying to get some more information in on that topic, as perhaps getting a representative at a future meeting potentially. So thank you, everybody, for your input and your genuine comments. Moving on this evening to well, first I'll ask, is there anybody here this evening with any other pertinent business to the township that you would just like to discuss? Okay, seeing no more, we'll move on to our Public Works Director, who has 2 items related to our earlier agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 10A, I'm looking for discussion and possible action tonight from the board to award the Beacon Hill Basin Retrofit Project. Solicitor Minor can speak to the completeness and responsibility of the bidders, but I'm looking to award this project to the lowest responsible bidder this evening.
Okay, Director, thank you, and thank you again for the really good narrative this week on that. Will you just re-explain what you explained to us as to the need to have this action taken tonight?
Yes.
Since we don't normally take action.
Yes, these projects under a strict timeline. Planting period is vital in the fall. We would like to get the project awarded so we can have our pre-construction meeting with the approved contractor. There's also, both projects are associated with different grant programs. The Beacon Hill project is associated with a PADEP Growing Greener grant. That period of performance expires at the end of this year. And the Sheepford project that I will discuss next, Basin project, is under a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant that also expires at the end of 2022. So it would be in our best interest to get those awarded as soon as possible to start the pre-construction meetings and get construction underway.
Thank you for confirming that. Mr. Solicitor, I assume that you are prepared to give us some information on these bids this evening.
Yes, Mr. President, and I'll take the Beacon Hill Basin retrofit project first. The lowest responsible bidder was Stormwater Management LLC for $162,000.
Mr. President, in accordance with the solicitor's information and presentation from Director Davis, I move to award the contract for Beacon Hill Basin Retrofit Project to Stormwater Maintenance LLC in the amount of $162,000.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz.
Second with a question.
I have a second from Commissioner Nagy, and we'll open up questions and discussion.
Just want to try to remember, what was the budgeted amount or the grant amounts that we had for both of these projects? Or where do these bids fall in?
These bids fall within that budgeted range for both project. I budgeted over $250,000 for retrofit projects this year in the 414 budget, so they fall within range.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. President.
Okay, any other questions or discussion, commissioners? I do have a motion and a second.
Yeah, Becky,
Yes,
are you familiar with the successful contractor?
I am. They did our first 2 retrofit projects. They did the Public Works project and the Sheepford project at the corner of Lisburn and Sheepford Road.
And you were able to work with them and you were happy with their work?
Very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any further discussion, commissioners? Hearing none, I do have a motion and a second on the question, so therefore, all those in favor of awarding the contract in the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Director, do you want to just lead us
Thank
through
you.
this one?
Yes,
It'll be similar discussion, I would assume.
Yes, 10B, this would be the Sheepford Basin retrofit project. I think we also had 2 bidders. Mr. Minor can speak to the responsibility of those 2 bidders.
Yes, Mr. President, the lowest responsible bidder for the Sheepford Basin retrofit project was Columbia Excavating LLC for the amount of $76,068.62.
Mr. President, in light of the solicitor's information and Director Davis's presentation that the low responsible bidder is Columbia Excavating LLC, I move to award the Sheaford Basin retrofit project to Columbia Excavating LLC in the amount of $76,068.62.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz and a second from Commissioner Nagy.
And I have a question.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Same question, Becky. Are you familiar with Columbia Excavating LLC?
I have not worked with that contractor previously. I know they do this work. They've done projects in the state of Pennsylvania and Maryland, but I have not worked with them prior.
But you know of no reason to have a reservation?
I do not.
Okay. I'm good, Mr. President.
Okay, any further discussion or any more questions? I have a motion and a second on awarding this bid as well. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, and thank you again for all your work on these proposals, Director. Next, moving on to Community and Economic Development. Looks like Mr. Evy's going to begin our discussions.
Good evening, Commissioners and the public. We have an agenda item following this for you to consider action on a sewage facility planning module, and it dawned on staff that we have new commissioners or relatively new commissioners. We don't present planning modules to you that often, so in your packet, I had a 2-page DEP fact sheet on an overview of sewage facility program, Act 537. Background history: it was enacted in 1966 to address public health and environmental problems created by inadequate and malfunctioning sewage disposal systems, both private and on lot. Its intent was to protect public and private drinking water supplies and address existing sewage disposal problems, and properly plan for new public and individual and community on-lot disposal systems. There are responsibilities of the municipality under the act, and some highlights are: number one, you as a board are required to develop, self-implement, and update a comprehensive plan for sewage facilities to address present and future needs. That's similar to the comprehensive plan and studies that we do for land use under the municipality's planning code, for our zoning ordinance, subdivision, and land development regulations. You need to submit documents to DEP when there's new land development proposed, or when there are changing conditions that would materially impact the ability of our plan to provide for the required needs. And then finally, you need to designate a primary sewage enforcement officer, or SEO, and an alternate. And I have been the appointed SEO for over 3 decades. And then we have a local SEO who works with various municipalities, Gary Morrow, who's my backup. Some of our duties include soil suitability evaluation, disposal system design review, permitting and inspection of those systems, and resolution of complaints and violations in accordance with DEP regulations. We do have public sewage disposal facilities like many other municipalities. You as a board of commissioners authorize the creation of the Lower Allen Township Authority as far back as 1956, and you appoint board of directors to that independently operating entity. They own and maintain the conveyance, collection, and treatment system in accordance with DEP and federal EPA regulations. The status of our 537 plan. This is it, and it was approved by DEP in 1990. It contains the usual comprehensive planning components that evaluate existing conditions and expected needs. There are certain planned areas for expansion of sewer system by developers, and there are other areas where the existing system is to be expanded by developers. Then there are 2 areas of the township that are pretty much expected to be long-term on lot, and if this works correctly, there we go. That area of the township, you can see that big blob is the hemp quarry area. We're talking about the state prison property up the hill from the compound. The other area for long-term, how do I get my cursor back? Oh, here. Got it. I'm sorry, I'm a rookie at this. Oh, yeah, now I'll erase that. I'm sorry. So, just erase it. And then the other area is essentially, here's Thompson Lane. Here's Sheefer Road. And there's the bridge you'll be hearing about a little later. So the area generally that's, you can see on the map, doesn't have much development. That's rural. It's got poor infrastructure, narrow, windy, or narrow roadways, no public water, no public sewer. That area is pretty much essentially expected to be long-term on-lot disposal. So those are the 2 areas for that. There you go. And then, okay, see a short-term memory. Then around 1990, the Lisburn district was sewered. That was one of our major needs predictions. So basically, this area on up to part of High Meadow, that area was pretty much sewered. And then Fair Oaks was recently sewered a few years ago. And if I can follow Russ, oh, I did it again. The Fair Oaks development along Roscommon Road, the old section of Fair Oaks was sewered. Okay, it's really this area right here was sewered. So those are the areas of the township. Okay. In 2014, the staff did a review of the 1990 plan. We had township engineer, sewer authority engineer, and myself. We did some analysis, and our conclusion was our assumptions seemed to be holding that the developers were extending the public sewer in areas that it was anticipated, and that we didn't have any unusual changes in demand for growth or development in those 2 areas that were expected to be long-term on lot. So we didn't ask you to commission a comprehensive update of that plan. And then most recently, the sewer authority, this in 2022, released a study that was commissioned by them, and they looked at 4 areas of township where we have existing on-lot systems that were possibly going to be needing some attention prior to developers extending the system. And the top priority was the area between the Yellow Breeches Creek and the Turnpike, between Valley Road and the 16 and 1700 blocks of Sheefer Road, 38 homes. Okay, so that was the top priority. I've been invited to the authority meeting September 1st to give my SEO perspective to that document and answer any public questions. So you can, and also Township has a contract with Dawood Engineering to do GIS work. They've taken our old list of on-lot systems, put them on a map, and before I retire, which is January, I'm going through the list and updating all of the on-lot disposal. So that's also a planning feature that we'll have in the future. So trying to keep on script here to keep moving for you here. Suffice it to say, without moving around the map and taking a lot more time, up on Slate Hill Road near the water tank and the Christian Life Church, there's 16 properties. On Lisburn Road across from Meridian, there are 4 properties. On Roscoe Road between the Turnpike and the elementary school, there are 8 properties. And as I mentioned, the area that got priority in the study was along Sheepford Road. Now, as I mentioned, my status as SEA is going to change, so just laying the scope or laying the suggestion that sometime between now and the end of the year, probably Aaron and I will work with some prospective consultants who can provide those services, and I'll just wrap up like an annual report and stuff and hand it off, and we can either retain our existing alternate, or that could be negotiable depending on what Gary wants to do. Now, we're wrapping up with the fact that I'm kind of segueing into tonight's next agenda item. I've worked here since June of 1985. I've been the alternate or primary SEO for over 3 decades. Tonight, this is the first new lot created in this township with 1 lot 2 as disposal in my career. So that kind of tells you that our assumptions in the 1990 plan were pretty accurate, and unless something changes, we don't foresee a lot of development pressure in those areas that I pointed out. Just to frame that, the Sadie Lane Sheepford Road subdivision has 16 lots, and it's right across from Sheepford Crossing. It's mapped for the developer to extend the public sewer, which they are, but there's 1 lot that is physically separated by steep slope, a dry run off the turnpike, and steep slope, and they've asked for the waiver which you granted in approving the plan that it not be hooked to public sewer. So even though you granted that waiver, the reason why it's on the agenda tonight is because we need to amend our official plan for that 1 lot through a planning module process, because our official plan says that will be sewered by the developer. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. So that pretty much concludes my presentation. If you or the public have any questions, and if not, I'll segue on to the next item.
Commissioners, any questions on that before he goes on to the?
Yeah, John, I think it should be stated
Other
that
item.
that lot 16 is a large lot.
It's over 7 acres. I personally witnessed the soils testing. It has a primary and a backup site, and I will be signing, attesting to that on a component of the planning module, just to verify the DEP that it is acceptable.
Good. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
And the soils were surprisingly good.
Thank you for the tutorial for us new folks.
Yes, that was very helpful.
Sewage Facilities 101, you got it. And then the public wants that summary presentation, you just go to the DEP website or just Google DEP Pennsylvania 537 plan overview. It'll give you more highlights.
Commissioners, I'm really comfortable with Mr. Eby's
Well, that's gonna come up
description tonight of all of this and giving us that update. And as we've been asked, possibly take some action on this resolution this evening to get this moving, I'd be looking for a motion potentially to adopt resolution 2022 R27.
Mr. President, I move to adopt resolution 2022-R-27.
Second.
Second that, I have a question.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz, and I have a second from Commissioner Black, but I have a question coming from
May I ask
Commissioner
a
Karen.
question? Okay, thank you. I just was curious, is there any detrimental effect to the township by granting this particular resolution
No.
with respect to lot 16?
There we go. I don't know how that went off. Okay, so I don't see any detriment.
There's no
It
negative.
basically, it's a large lot that's physically isolated. They even have to build a state permitted culvert because there's a dry run, and that's how you get to the lot. So it is its own animal, so to speak. It's an anomaly to the rest of the development.
So there's no detriment to the existing system?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Eby, I have a question that's, I guess it's related here, just in general. When we approve new
Subdivision and land development plans?
no, but now I'm just, the sand mounts, what, when we approve it's not sewage, it's having a.
An
brain-
on-lot system.
An on-lot system these days, the new stuff, do they adhere to a maintenance program that's different than somebody that has one that's old? I don't really understand that fully. Like, are there grandfathered systems that don't have to maintain them as strict as let's say a new one does?
No, actually, some alternate and new systems require maintenance contracts because they have sophisticated metering and dosing equipment. Older systems, like the old gravity systems, we still recommend the tank pumping and so forth. But if there's no mechanical parts, there's not much to maintain other than keeping your tank clean of solids.
Okay, so the maintenance is just, it's not really, doesn't need to be routine or anything like that?
Well, it should be at routine intervals depending on the household size and habits. Every 2 to 5 years, the tank should be pumped.
And then do we monitor that in any way?
We do
with
not.
folks?
DEP has not mandated that the township have a maintenance program. You could adopt one, but I would think that would be in line with, having a consultant do it, not a staff member.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to carry on with that. Thanks.
And I just had one final nit before I finalize my second, but just in the secretary's signature block, it should just read Township Board of Commissioners instead of Supervisors.
We tried to overwrite that in the form fillable and had a problem, so we can scratch it out and write in, because trust me, a staff member spent a lot of time trying to clean up the DEP form.
Just wanted to note that, but I'm satisfied otherwise and finalize my second on the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so I have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions or any more discussion?
Just one. John, the bulk of the lots in the Sadie Lane subdivision, will they have public water?
Correct. All public utilities. And I might add that DEP has already issued a letter waiving having to do a planning module for those 15 lots because the sewer authority has attested to the fact that they have conveyance and treatment capacity, and there will be no need for updating your plan for this development. That is very routine for, a development that's infill to not have to do a full-blown planning module for public sewer.
Now, will public water be extended into Lot 16?
No, it'll have on-lot.
It'll have an on-lot water system.
Mm-hmm. It's very isolated geographically or geologically from the rest of the development.
But I think in line with Commissioner Karen's concern, that would be the concern, possible contamination of a on-lot water system.
They'll have to maintain the DEP mandated minimum isolation distance of 100 feet from the well to the absorption area and 50 feet from the septic tank or tank, whatever type of tank it will be, to the well.
Any other questions or discussion, Commissioners?
I'm good.
Seeing that everybody's good at this point, I do have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Moving on to a discussion and some possible action on the acceptance of the overall, or Arcona overall master plan update. Who will be leading us?
All right, so we have on the agenda tonight also a plan for 8.2. And as each of these phases come in, it's been kind of the process that our Charter Homes and Neighborhood is updating their overall master plan. This was kind of it's almost kind of like the preliminary plan for the whole subdivision. And as things change, they end up updating this. This is the newer update. One of the reasons staff was interested in this had a lot to do with some of the recreation component that was in it. We were hearing from some of the residents, they were curious about where we were in the recreation plan, and they provided an update for us tonight. So this is kind of the precursor leading into 8.2, and the master plan is something that we accept. It's not necessarily something that we have to approve because it does get changed, so we could just ask for changes and work with them. And then we did have, as a condition of the plan for 8.2, you'll see that there's an acceptance of the overall master plan, so they kind of go together. Laura, are you doing this one tonight? Anthony?
Good evening, Anthony Ferranda Diedrich with Charter Homes and Neighborhoods. I am joined by a few people this evening, Laura Curran being one of them. Also joined by Kelly Parson, our president for operations in Central Pennsylvania, Charlie Courtney, our land use attorney, and Dave Kegerais, our design engineer for the project. So I'll take a few minutes and just update you with respect to this overall master plan and what's different about it from the last time you would have seen this. We submitted an updated overall master plan in connection with phase 8.1 at Arcona, which is currently under construction. And we have a land development plan for you for phase 8.2. It's on the agenda after this to consider. And so as Aaron said, in connection with submitting land development plans for each phase of the project, we also submit an updated or revised overall master plan to show you what is or is not changing. The first two sheets I have in this, or up above here in this slide deck, just start generally with the overall master plan for Arcona. You've seen this before. Arcona is 248, roughly 250 acres in total. And this map depicts various areas that are planned for development within this larger tract. Those are represented by the colored markings. Residential neighborhoods generally are shown in that yellow color. Areas where commercial development can occur in tandem with residential development is shown in the orange color, the salmon color. This is the latest page from the overall master plan. This has not changed since the last time you would have seen this. In fact, very little has changed here. We've added things to the master plan that I'll show you here as we proceed. This is our open space plan, which is again another sheet in our overall master plan. There is not, we haven't made any changes to this from what had been previously reviewed and adopted with phase 8.1. The yellow on this map shows the crisscrossing of the major trail networks within Arcona. You have the trail system runs east-west along Ross Moyne Road. It also runs north-south along the railroad here, along Strong Road, and along Lisburn and Arcona roads. We will talk here in a minute about a railroad crossing, an at-grade railroad crossing of the Norfolk Southern Railroad, which is contemplated on the overall master plan and is complete. And I'll give you an update on that here in a moment. You can also see that there's been contemplated a connection, this note's a little small, but a connection down into the public park within Upper Allen Township, the Winding Hill North Park, or West Winding Hill North Park, and we'll discuss that. That is part of the plan for phase 8.2 that I'll show you here again in a subsequent slide. Oops. Sorry, these files are a little big, so sometimes they take some time to render here. Yeah, I think I might have gotten frozen here. Let me see for. I think I upset it when I clicked clicked that button. Oh, Here we go. Give me one more second here, and then if this doesn't render, I also have this on a thumb drive I can insert and try to pull it up that way. I'll try to, I might try to do that rather than have it loading through this web page. Let me try to do it this way. Oh, right there. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Oh, there we go. Great. At least the scroll function is working. As this loads, the addition to the master plan that had not been in prior master plans is a comprehensive recreation and open space plan. So one of the comments from Township staff was, while we're seeing kind of bits and pieces of these recreation open space components come in with each phase of Arcona, can we get into one exhibit kind of the entirety of Arcona with what's been built to date relative to open space and recreation and what you're planning for in the future. So that's what this map intends to do. And as soon as it finishes rendering, we'll talk generally about it. Again, as this is coming into focus. So we've got the full 250 acres of Arcona that you're seeing here. Perfect, here we go. Railroad is in the center of the plan. So here's the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Here's Ross Moyne Road. This is the roundabout at Arcona and Ross Moyne and Lisburn Roads. Roundabout at Arcona and Lisburn Roads. 8.1 that we just talked about and was approved earlier this year is in this area of the plan, mix of single-family homes and townhouses. And then 8.2 that we'll talk about in a bit tonight sits down here to the south. The plan includes a series of public parks that are denoted in dark green shading. All of the green shading here is open space that is available to folks within the neighborhood to utilize. We're not shading stormwater basins or other facilities that aren't usable open space. But the dark green facilities are where we have space that's either programmed and or where we're holding events that are going to be open to the public. So if I start down here on the east side of the railroad, this is the Terra Park. I think you're probably familiar with this. This is at the location here, Arcona Road and the intersection of Strong Road. Terra Park is about 1.5 acres. It's the playground facility within Arcona, kind of the natural climbing walls, sandboxes, which has been part of the plan for a long time and was actually installed as part of the development of the High Point phase here. The second neighborhood park that's, again, open to the public and the public is invited into these areas is kind of the central gathering place or central green space within Arcona. There are no facilities located here other than Adirondack chairs, maybe some cornhole boards. But the idea is that this is a place where if a village business or Arcona business wants to hold an event, or the neighborhood association wants to hold an event, this would be the place to do it in this square. The businesses within Arcona ring this village green in this area and in this area. This is Springgate here, just for orientation purposes. As you move further north on the plan, there is a large undisturbed area of really natural preserved space that includes a walking path. This is a hiking trail that winds its way up through about 20 acres of land that will never be developed. If you were to walk back up in here, these are, again, natural walking paths that are trimmed back and maintained by the neighborhood association that are open to members of our residents in Arcona. This is a place where you can go hike. You can get up on top of some of the highest parts within the Arcona property and kind of look out over the balance of the project. But this would be the place, again, that you would go if you wanted to take a hike. There are benches along the trail, some other outposts that you can stop and do some sightseeing, but that's what this area is for. The balance of the real estate that you see shaded in green on the eastern side of the railroad includes a number of walking trails that are highlighted in orange. So you can kind of see them here running north-south down along the railroad, coming up through this linear open space through the Terra Park to Arcona Road, certainly north-south along Strong Road, again through this linear open space, down Arcona Road, down to the Springgate building, as well as a number of trails through the open space areas within the very earliest portions of Arcona, which was our high point phase. All of those trails are open to the public. So one of the things that we denoted in this master recreation plan is that while the trail system is kind of privately owned and maintained by the hundreds, close to 1,000 homeowners within Arcona and the businesses that exist there, those trails are open publicly to folks that if you want to come to a shop within Arcona, get on a trail and walk to someplace else, you're more than welcome to do that. Over on the western side of the railroad, there is a connection. Here's this connection down into the Upper Allen Park that we talked about. Part of that kind of publicly available trail system that allows you to get from kind of the inner workings of the downtown commercial area across the railroad. Again, this crossing has been installed. This at-grade safe pedestrian crossing has been installed all the way down into that public space and vice versa. The trail system that you see here on this plan is within this phase of the neighborhood is built down to about right here. With the 8.2 development plan, we'll finish the extension of that trail down into the public park, which has basketball hoops, baseball fields, soccer fields. It's really a beautiful park. We have been in close communication with Upper Allen Township. They're aware that this connection is coming. We've traded drafts of an agreement to put this trail in place. Charlie's helping us with that. And I expect that agreement will be finalized here in the next 30 to 60 days. But this will become a reality and will be installed in connection with the development of Phase 8.2. There are two pools associated with Arcona. The first pool that's already been built and being used is the pool and clubhouse associated with the Arcona Strand Apartments, which is here. This pool is a dedicated facility just for folks that live within the apartment component of Arcona. We are under construction for a second pool. This one's a little larger within this Arcona Phase 8.2. It sits right here, kind of in the middle of the project on the west side of the railroad, right south of this linear open space. This is about 3.5 acres of green park space. One of the things that we talk about in the narrative associated with the recreation component in the OMP is that this will be improved with a pavilion at some point, that it will also be open to the public. And we're going to be working with staff to identify a location for that, for the appropriate place for that to go throughout, again, this 3.5 acre park. If this pool sits right south of that, the pool is open to all homeowners within Arcona. It'll certainly be a big draw for folks that are living, again, on the west side of the railroad, but certainly folks that are on the east side, if they wanted to walk or ride a bike rather than drive over here, that trail system is being put in place to allow for that. There's a small clubhouse amenity here that is an open-air structure. I'll show you a picture of what that will look like in a minute. But again, that's under construction. Because if you recall, we amended our Phase 8.1 plan to include this pool. So that's been approved and construction has started. We expect the pool to be complete by the middle of September. One of the last things I'll just point out to you here, it complements the kind of the open space recreation component associated with Arcona, but we do have this community building here that was also the subject of a prior approval from this board. This building will be starting here in September, and when it's complete, it'll include initially an office space that the charter folks will use, and then as the neighborhood continues to transition, it'll become a community gathering place, again, open to all folks within the Arcona neighborhood. There's about 8 miles of walking trails that are proposed on this plan, the majority of which have been installed, again, but for this connection down into the Upper Allen Park. The intent of Arcona, because it's crisscrossed by so many other encumbrances, pipeline easements, PP&L easements, railroads, the idea from the beginning or from the outset of this project was that we would make the most of those kind of more linear open spaces, connect them up with trails. We would be providing places for people to gather, whether they're pavilions, pools, and so on, but kind of the larger sports fields that you might see in other neighborhoods within the township where developers are dedicating 20, 30, 35, 40 acres to larger public infrastructure is being accommodated through this connection into Upper Allen. So it's taken, I think, how many years it's been, a number of years to talk that through with Upper Allen, but we think we have consensus there that, again, that connection is coming. So I just wanted to point that out, as that's kind of always been the design of the project since it was initially put forward back in 2006. I'll stop there. As I said, this plan has been added as an additional sheet to the overall master plan for Arcona, and that's really the only update associated with the OMP.
Okay. Commissioners, I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to open it up to everybody else first. And if we get in, I would just ask respectfully that we go around and we'll just kind of allot time on a second shot at it too. Thank you. Commissioner Nagy?
As the recreation liaison, I just want to point out in your packets, I was at the meeting where this was presented to the Recreation and Parks Board, and the chairman outlined, essentially did a pretty good job of what their concerns or what their wishes and hopes would be as things move along. So I just want to point that out.
Is that it? Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions right now? I just have one right now, Anthony.
Sure.
And thanks for your presentation. I guess I'll make a comment first. I guess the pool's going to be ready for like a polar plunge ribbon cutting. Is that what they call it?
Well, I know we're working closely with Kelly, and so
I've seen them breaking ground over there.
We're working as fast as we can. But
I would just say, on behalf of some of the residents that I've heard make comments in the past about the pool, and then reading the Parks and Recs, and thank you, Commissioner, for pointing out the Parks and Recs comments. Reading the Parks and Recs comments, they did make comment about the pool, and I guess a little bit of a concern. The underlying concern that I read in between the lines there was that would the pool be big enough? And this also came from some residents in the past, both the Planning Commission and that some residents that have approached me separately. And I guess the concern is the pool going to be big enough to accommodate all the folks in the community? Now, I realize the apartments have their own pool, and I also realize they're probably not going to be excluded from using this pool as well. And I'm thinking, a comment I heard several months ago from a resident at the podium was something like, on July 4th weekend, is there, You know, is it even going to be fun being in the pool? And so if you can just talk a little bit about what you came up with the space of the pool and the design that would accommodate the community.
Sure.
As you see it.
Yeah, sure. So I heard that comment as well, and I'm going to state at the outset that the pool is sized appropriately for the number of homeowners that live in Arcona and that could be using the pool at any given time. So I've been at Charter for, it'll be 10 years here in a couple of months. This is the 6th pool that I've been involved in designing and building. This is the largest pool that we've built to date. The pool in Walden is smaller than this pool, Walden being about 700 homes throughout the neighborhood. So just to put that in context, we've done this quite a bit, at least certainly over while I've been at Charter, and to date, this is going to be the largest of the facilities that we've built. The square footage of the pool itself is something like 100 by 40 feet, so it'll be, it's not going to be an Olympic-sized swimming pool, but, you know, we're not going to be holding swimming matches there. This is a place for folks to go on, you know, on a weekend to enjoy that area. The size of the facility or the area itself is about half an acre. We had taken 2 of the largest home sites in phase 8.1 that initially sat here and converted those home sites into this larger pool facility. So it has a pool deck that's quite large. It'll be equipped with, you know, all of the pool furniture. Charter's going to supply that. So that when it's, you know, it's turned over to the association, it'll be ready to use as soon as that happens. Okay. So we're confident it's going to accommodate the use that is going to be put forward here.
Okay, thank you. My next question comes about the green space, the 2 big plots that, well, they look like there's 2 and there's a small connection on the trails that go out into the area that's not going to be developed into the future. Charter bought that one plot off of, I'm not sure what phase that'll be in the future, and then passed it, and then they bought it right away or a piece of land that connects it to. Can you just talk a little bit, about the width of that area between those 2 lots? And then my other question, I'll just put it in here now, is would the HOA, once they take control with the residents, once they take control of an HOA down the road, do you foresee them being able to do other things with that? Not building it out, of course, in developing it, but to do more than just having a walkway through there and you know, could that potentially be something an HOA could do something with later?
Yeah, so this is the area you're talking about, up in the far northwest corner of the property, I believe. So again, this will update here in a minute. I guess the background here is that we looked at developing these parcels at one point over the course of kind of thinking through what Arcona was going to be, and the area is heavily wooded. In order to develop it, you'd have to do mass clearing up on top of a hill, really flatten the hill down to create buildable space for it to be usable. We decided relatively early in the project that we weren't going to do that. Not only would it be difficult to get to this area, there are pipelines you have to cross to get there, and by the time you actually go to the trouble of clearing and kind of leveling out the space, it's not only are you detracting from something that would be a nice amenity for the homeowners at Arcona, but it doesn't really give you a return on your investment from a development perspective. So early on, this was denoted as a space where we were going to be running trails through this area and treating this more as a preserve, and that's been reflected on the overall master plan since that plan was first introduced to the township. Right now, Charter does not own the real estate where this trail runs. What we have done is we've acquired an easement from the Lesher family to install this trail and to maintain it through that land. At some point, Charter will acquire that land. It's part of our purchase agreement with the Lesher family to acquire it. We haven't done that yet. And frankly, we went out and acquired this easement because we wanted to provide the opportunity for folks to utilize this trail kind of before we were ready to take ownership of that land. So the Leschers worked with us to provide this access, notwithstanding that we haven't actually bought the property yet from them. In terms of how you could really use it, like what I was saying, Commissioner, you can't really improve the land around it. The neighborhood association could end up, maybe doing some additional things along the trail, if there are bird houses or additional benches from what's there today, if there's some educational piece to this that we want to establish as part of the walking trail, we can. And I actually think the Recreation and Parks Commission made some comments to this effect, and we're happy to follow up with them on that. But this is a hiking trail. You can't really pave it and get in and brush hog it and keep it clear, but it's designed for folks that want to get out in the woods and hike.
Gotcha. Okay, and then people can freely walk throughout the parcel even if
Correct.
they went off the trail?
Correct.
Okay, got it. And then one other question I have is the third roundabout that is noted on the plan up Ross Moyne and Strong Road, I guess that would be in the future here. At what point, what phase will we see that start to come into play?
So it'll likely be this area. Once this area is developed between Ross Moyne Road and Strong Road, or this other corner between Strong Road and Lisburn Road. There's also a large phase to the north. We believe that any one of these parcels going would trigger the need for the roundabout. There's a monitoring agreement in place with the township and with PennDOT that with respect to every phase of development that comes in, we run through a traffic analysis. We determine whether the trips generated by the phase in question would trigger the need for this roundabout. If it does, we're obligated to put it in at that time. To date, it hasn't been tripped. We think it would probably be triggered by the development of those three parcels.
At some point, regardless, it will be. Okay. And that concludes what I have right now, Commissioners. If there's anything else. And if there's no further comments or discussions, we would be seeking a motion potentially to accept the Arcona overall master plan update.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Cooks.
I will second, but I have a question.
Second with question. Commissioner Black.
Anthony, if we approve this master plan update, will we stop getting requests for waivers?
We do have a couple of requests. We're going to get into that with 8.2, and we're going to cut back on what's actually in front of you tonight. But Commissioner, I anticipate that, just frankly speaking, there's always going to be a need for a waiver, some waiver of something. For instance, the granite curbing that we do throughout the neighborhood, that's a hallmark of the design of the neighborhood, requires a waiver.
I don't have a problem with that waiver. I think it adds character. The ones that I have problems with, Anthony, requiring access to individual homes from roadways, alleys, and so forth, and requiring driveways to be more than 40 feet from intersections.
Yeah.
And the waiver requiring a 50-foot wide street right-of-way. Now, Arcona has agreed to keep the streets private, but I'm concerned about how long that favor will last. And the township can't accept those streets on less than a legally required right-of-way. The waiver on offsetting streets at least 150 feet from closest intersection, that's a safety concern. And those are the ones that I am most concerned about. And I personally am prepared to vote for the plan tonight. However, I'm only one of five. And I would throw those out as my concern, not everybody's concern, and ask that your design professional take that into account in future requests for waivers.
Yep, understood, Commissioner. And I will say that with respect to design-related waivers and modifications, your question, are we going to continue to see these? I'll answer no to that. Those that you specifically referenced, I'll go through with you tonight about how we're going to either make changes to the plan to eliminate them, and I can talk to you about what that is, or just avoid them altogether in the future. So we've had that discussion with staff, and we think we can address your specific concerns on the 8.2 plan. On that plan specifically, and then going forward, we understand, not to be looking for waivers from design criteria.
Okay.
That would be
All right.
be a safety implication.
Thank you, Anthony.
So just a reminder, we're talking specifically, we have a motion and a second specifically on the acceptance of the Arcona overall master plan update. And then I'm assuming we'll wind up with a lot more discussion on the next item that has to do with Arcona. So Commissioners, is there any other questions or any further discussion on the motion for the acceptance of the Arcona overall master plan update? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Now we would go to, which is 11D on our agenda this evening. And I would assume our Director Trone, are you handling this? And this is a discussion on a major subdivision and land development plan, Arcona 8.2. Which we've heard some
Look,
of.
see, it does it to me too. Don't feel bad. I know, it's always. Which one looks like page 10? That's the one I wanted. You didn't show the pool. Did you want to show those?
Yeah, I can get to it and get a date. That's fine.
Let's see if this one will load a little bit. All right, well, Anthony did it off the cuff, so I'll see if I can match his width here. So this section is 8.2. He kind of gave you a little bit of a reference. That's what I was going to do too, is kind of show where it is. So if this is Ross Moyne Road, here's the railroad track. This is 8.1, which is under construction. 8.2 is behind it. You'll see it kind of touches the turnpike, and this over here is Upper Allen. There are 56 single-family homes in this section and 88 single-family attached. So those would be like the townhomes or some of the, I don't know, we call them our slang here is 4-packs. I don't think that's what you guys call them, but it's other homes that are kind of back-to-back. And let's see, what else do we want to tell you about it? This over here is a rather large stormwater basin. And anything else we want to say? I feel like that's pretty much the description of where we are. Sat with this came in April. Staff met with charter staff and associates. I want to say 3 different times, and they actually withdrew the plan from the agenda a couple times so that we can meet and talk through this. And some of the questions and concerns that we had mentioned to them and that they did change included, we've seen from some of the other phases where the intent of this is supposed to be kind of a walkable community, but it was darker, and we had heard that from some of our residents, and so they added some pedestrian lighting to the plan. We talked a little bit about how sometimes the 90-degree turns in here with the parking on the street can sometimes make visibility difficult, and they actually pulled back a little bit on some of those intersections to make them the visibility better. They added some crosswalks at those intersections. Those were things that we were seeing were a little bit of an issue. So we did have some back and forth before we came to the planning commission. This went to before the planning commission in July, and the planning commission did recommend it for approval. It also went to the Rec and Park Board, and they gave some comments too. I think those were in your packet as well. That's a little bit of the overview of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Anthony Ferranda Dietrich again. Thank you, Aaron. So I won't try to mess with the screen a whole lot here because it's not cooperating. But yeah, just to build on what Aaron said, this is an extension, a southern extension of an existing neighborhood, which is currently under construction. The homes that we're proposing here, mix of single-family homes and townhouses, very much in keeping with what's already been built in the northern section of Phase 8. And that, again, was approved earlier actually at the end of 2021. The pool that we talked about on the prior slide is right here. And then 8.2 kind of just extends out of to the south of that down to the property line. The turnpike is high in elevation, so the property is climbing in elevation as you move from east to west. This is a really interesting spot on the plan because again, it's more of a wooded area, and so we view this as an opportunity to really just snake a very private drive with a cul-de-sac up to that top area of the plan, and really, again, just like I said, snake in some larger single-family home sites up here at this high point. The site, as I said, then drops down. Aaron mentioned the stormwater basin here. The stormwater basin has already been built. It was built with Phase 8.1 and is in operation. Let me just see if I can jump back here to mine, see if it cooperates. I included some imagery of the pool here. We touched on that. This was supposed to be a view of the portion of 8.2 that does not include these estate lots up to the left. I'll come back up here and whoops. And maybe that's, where was I, Aaron? I left it, now it went blurry again. We'll try to work with this and see if that renders up here in a minute. Again, that 3.5 acre park that we talked about with the Recreation and Parks Board and that I mentioned in the earlier presentation is running across the plan this way. We have a large lawn area that we've called Union Lawn. That'll be the hangout for this portion of the neighborhood along with the pool. Right in the center of the overall Phase 8. And the phase itself is shaped like a street network, shaped like, more of a rectangle, very linear, like we've done in other phases. The townhouse component up in the top right-hand corner of the plan, this again is the stormwater basin. This looks much like the Springfield Muse area that's built in 2.3 on the east side of the railroad across from Springgate. We're also building this same type of carriage house off in 8.1. It's sitting over here off of Ross Moyne Road as you wind your way up towards the turnpike. I'm sorry the image isn't rendering very well, but that's kind of the broad overview of the plan, and hopefully it'll come into focus here in a minute. We did have a number of waivers. I counted 7 waivers or modification requests associated with the plan. Since we had made those requests, we've gone back and looked at how we can modify the plan to eliminate some of those waivers. So when we get to that point in the discussion, I can go down each one and we can talk about what they are and whether or not we still would need them in connection with building this plan. We're going to go from 7 down to 4 that are all, though those 4 are relatively straightforward. I'll pause here. Again, my apologies for the imagery, but happy to answer questions about this plan.
Commissioners, I'll open it up if you have any general questions. My thought is to ask at this point, if the commission don't have any other questions, and I'll wait about, well, maybe you just talk about what waivers you're gonna look
Sure.
at withdrawing, and then maybe that'll at least point us in the direction of where we would want to focus our questions.
Okay, great. So the third modification request on the list from the agenda related to driveways being no closer than 40 feet to intersections. So specifically, Commissioner Black, that issue was coming up in this area of the plan, specifically these home sites that sat on this kind of 90-degree turn, as well as these home sites sitting on this 90-degree turn the other way. We looked at this with the engineer, and we're able to modify the width of these home sites by just starting to slide lot lines down the street, where we can actually create wider lots on these intersections that would allow us to pull the driveways away from the intersection, maintain that minimum 40-foot separation. We can also pick that additional length up by just changing the orientation of the driveway. So when you're standing in the street, and if you're looking at the house, instead of the driveway being on the left, your left, maybe we can move that to the right. So a combination of switching the handing for the garages and just widening the width of some of these home sites are going to allow us to comply with that saldo requirement and avoid the need for that modification request. So that was number 3. Jumping down, I'm sorry, that was C. Jumping down to E, there was a waiver here that dealt with the 150 feet of offsetting streets. So the way that this saldo provision is meant to work, and Commissioner Black, I know that you're very, very familiar with this, is this provision is talking about when you have a street that's intersected by 2 cross streets. So where you've got a street doing this, coming into the street, and another street doing this, coming into the street, you want this length of street between those 2 intersections to be at least 150 feet. The idea being that when you get to the intersection and want to pull out, if this is less than 150 feet, you could run into a situation where somebody is making, in this instance, this movement. This person either doesn't see that or isn't expecting that because the length of this street isn't long enough, and presents a safety issue. We don't have that issue here. I'm just pointing out that that's what the saldo provision is meant to address. As we looked at the plan, we had originally thought that we needed that waiver request here in this, again, down here in this section of the plan. But as we looked at that with Charlie and with Dave Kegerais, the provision that we were requesting relief from doesn't apply in this configuration because you don't have cross traffic coming into this street this way versus this way. All the traffic is moving, and there are stop signs here, but all that traffic is moving in a continuous way in its own lane. There's no lane crossing. The same thing with coming here. So again, we originally thought that saldo provision, as we read it quickly, would apply, and we needed relief to do this configuration of intersections down here, but we don't, after having looked at that closer. So that was an oversight on our part.
Okay.
So that would eliminate the need for E. And then the last one that we were going to eliminate is the very next one is F. And that applies to timing for the payment of recreation fees. Historically, we had been paying recreation fees on a per building basis with each building permit that was submitted to the township. In talking with staff, that has over the years created some accounting headaches and tracking headaches. So we've agreed to not seek this waiver or modification, which would then mean that the rec fees are paid at plan recording. So the rec fees that are due for the whole phase get paid when as a condition to recording the plan, as opposed to coming in incrementally as each home is built. So agreeing to that would eliminate that waiver request.
You may want to address that to our Director of Finance.
So I think that should make everybody happy. So that takes us from 7 down to 4. And the other 4 are pretty innocuous. I'm happy to run through those, but those were the 3 we're going to eliminate.
I would say at this point, Commissioners, why don't we just open this up and then we'll take the waivers. Any questions on those specifically if we decide to take action on those one at a time. So I would just say open up for questions about the plan at this point or any comments. Okay.
Well, just one quick one, and I suspect I know Anthony's response. Is there any anticipated future offer of dedication of street rights of ways of less than 50 feet?
No. We did it. We designed the plan here. Commissioner Black, if this is an issue for the township, then we will gladly design streets with 50-foot right-of-ways. With respect to Phase 8.2, it's a 48-foot right-of-way. But I want to stress that the infrastructure within that 48-foot right-of-way is exactly the same as if the right-of-way was 50 feet. So the cartway in our design is 28 feet. You have a 5-foot beauty strip for street trees and a 5-foot sidewalk on either side of that 28-foot cartway. That gets you to a 48-foot right-of-way. And that's consistent with how you build streets under your saldo. The change that we were asking for is your saldo has a 1-foot strip of additional right-of-way on the back side of the sidewalk. So between the end of the sidewalk and the actual right-of-way, there's another 1-foot strip of real estate on either side of the road to take you from 48 feet to 50 feet. And when we designed this phase, as we have done in other phases, we eliminated within that right-of-way that 1-foot strip outside of, the improvements, namely in this case, the sidewalk. So that's the deviation from your saldo and the reason for the request, but the way the street's constructed and put together is the same. We're not narrowing the cartway, we're not narrowing the beauty strip or narrowing the sidewalk.
Okay, I understand, Anthony. Thank you.
Commissioner?
So actually, I have, I guess, 2 related questions or concerns. The first is technically not really part of the waivers, but the concern about the road maintenance in the future, being that we're not taking this on, but what does happen down the road, and I commend staff for voicing their concerns with the roads and with the snow plowing and issues. My thoughts are 5-10 years down the road, we're still going to end up being responsible if there are issues or residents coming to us. What can we do to make sure these roads are more acceptable and appropriate for maintenance so that we don't put a burden on the residents, of Arcona and our residents down the road?
I can, I don't know if staff wanted to respond to that, or I'm happy to.
Yeah, I guess they'll be essentially in your hand. how do you ensure that the HOA, is able to take on something of this size and scale for
Right.
road maintenance and?
Okay. Well, yeah, so we do have, as you know, a number of alleys throughout Arcona. There are alleys in this phase, just like in all the other phases. Those are all privately owned and maintained by the neighborhood association. So the neighborhood association already is playing a role within every single one of these phases in terms of maintaining something. So it's always got the alleys because the township doesn't accept dedication of alleys. They'll always be private. The other thing I would offer to you is that we have not, as of today, dedicated any streets in all of Arcona, and we've been under construction for the last 8 years at Arcona. That includes the earlier phases, High Point, where you have this same configuration where the neighborhood association has been maintaining those streets over the course of that period of time. It's already happening, is the only point I want to make there, in other phases of Arcona. And then the last piece, I think that we can, what we learned through this process is there's just scrutiny given to snow easements that the staff, rightfully so, want to make certain that there are places for their snowplows to push the snow. And when you don't provide for that, that makes snow removal more difficult, which is what led to our offer to say, well, we can make these private if staff is concerned about having places to push snow. That being said, we're also happy with this plan to work with staff to find snow easements where snow can be pushed to ensure that the association has the ability to do that. And we can make that a condition to your approval. Happy to work through Aaron and Becky on that. So I would offer that also. And then, look, I think just the last thing would be, this is a kind of a really robust association. It has many roles and responsibilities within the 250 acres that encompass Arcona, beyond just maintaining what'll be 3 streets. It's essentially this and this. So 1, 2, 3. So from an overall budget perspective or maintenance perspective for the entirety of Arcona, this should not, the association should incur, material expense in connection with maintaining this small portion of streets, given everything else that they're doing here. So I would just add that also. Yeah. But again, I think going forward, we can work with staff earlier on to find areas to make sure snow can be plowed.
Mr. President, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
And perhaps it's really Mr. Courtney. This has been an issue all along, Charlie and Anthony. So are the homeowners association active, and are assessments being paid, or is it still a matter where it's charter folks that really sit on those boards?
So two questions. One is it active and are assessments being paid? And absolutely, assessments are being paid. They're being collected on a monthly basis. And I could get back to you with how much money is kind of in the bank on behalf of this association, but it's more than enough to maintain these various areas of Arcona, as it has been up through phase 8.2. There are neighborhood associations, currently 3 neighborhood associations within Arcona. There's an Arcona High Point Neighborhood Association, Arcona Crossroads Association, and an Arcona West Neighborhood Association. Arcona High Point and Arcona Crossroads both have annual elections coming up in October, at which point those boards will be entirely resident run. Okay. So all seats on those executive boards will be held by residents, and I think there's notice going out to that effect here yet this month. So that'll happen in October. The Arcona West Neighborhood Association, which is where this phase is located, again, there are assessments being paid by the owners in 8.1 that have moved in, but we're not far enough along with the build out to have turned over the Arcona West Neighborhood Association yet. That'll happen as we get into conveying homes in 8.2.
And just one follow-up, Anthony, so besides the streets, big infrastructure like the swimming pool and that railroad crossing, is that a master association, or do all the other associations pay into those kind of things that really are neighborhood-wide?
So the main infrastructure, or the big infrastructure items, like those things that you mentioned, and I would just add to that list, we have some larger stormwater facilities, like that are regional facilities. I showed you that big basin. It's actually off the page here. That's already been installed. This basin's already been constructed and is serving all of Phase 8. So large regional basins like that, as well as these collector trails and the pool, are being maintained by the Master Association. So all of the homeowners within Arcona are paying assessments into the Master Association to maintain those larger infrastructure items. And then there are these phase-specific associations that I just mentioned, 3 of them, that have responsibility within their particular phase. So some homeowners elect to have the exterior of their homes maintained by the association. And that service is provided with respect to some townhouse buildings. So that individual association for that particular phase would be responsible for providing that service, as an example. And there's an assessment that association charges the folks that just live in that phase to perform that service.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. First of all, Commissioner Nagy has a question. Real quick, great news on the association turnovers. I think that when that happens, it's going to set a lot of residents, particularly in the early 2 phases, at ease. I think that's been a question that's come up a lot, particularly I think at the last Planning Commission meeting that you weren't at. I think you got the message.
Well, that message was relayed.
But
yes,
Commissioner Nagy.
Yeah.
I just want to make a second comment on the waiver and second Vice President Black's concern with the number of waivers. I must admit, seeing that many in our packet this week was a bit disconcerting. Doing some research for tonight's meeting, when you look up through the municipal planning code, just quoting from them for waivers and modifications, says when literal compliance with mandatory provision is shown to the satisfaction of the governing body to be either unreasonable or cause undue hardship, or for modifications, literal enforcement will cause undue hardship because of peculiar conditions pertaining to the land in question, or that such modifications will not be contrary to public interest. So I just kind of want to point out those definitions moving forward, as Vice President Black mentioned, the number of waivers we have here, trying to make sure they truly do meet these definitions and what the true spirit of waivers should be going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? So I would like to thank staff and particularly Director Trone. I know you mentioned that you've worked with staff, and I know you've worked hard on working through this, and I'm glad to hear some of what we've discussed tonight on this, particularly with the Homeowners Association issue, but with the waivers and working through things. And this has come up in the past, and I know, again, moving forward, I think this is just reinforcing, we still have to build the rest of Arcona out, right? And in the end, an HOA 10, 20 years from now, I really do care about what's going to happen down the road when people say, what were they thinking with a particular project? And for instance, snow removal. So I appreciate reaching out and saying, look, we're willing to talk about some snow removal easements or whatever you're calling them, because I think that that's really important. I know having the streets private, you can come up with creative ways probably to hire people to put snow over the sidewalks and things like that. I know a couple of nor'easters hit, and that's probably not going to happen when people are frantically trying to clear snow for their clients. as quickly as we would want. And so it does pose public safety issues and things like that, just by nature. So I appreciate the willingness to work with staff, and whether we need to do a condition or not on that particular waiver or the plan itself tonight, I'll leave that up to the board to decide. But thanks for thinking about that. I think that moving forward, the more we can think down the road with what we try to solidify with these plans, particularly in Arcona right now, as we build the rest of it out, I think we'll be a lot better off. So thanks.
Agreed. It's been a real pleasure working with Erin and her team over the last few months.
Yeah. So, commissioners, if there's no further questions, what I would suggest we do is we just start at the top. We're not going to go through C, E, or F, since those have been essentially withdrawn from. Do you have a comment?
I do have a concern about E. We may want to table that one and come back. We do have time to do that one, just because we had an engineer and he reviewed these back early on in April, and then he left. But we had worked through most of the technical items, and we haven't had a chance to have this re-reviewed. And I think we felt like there was a little bit of discussion about whether this was actually an intersection or not. And I think Anthony showed you the section we were referring to, and, I think they were saying that they don't think it's an intersection because of the way the cars travel. But if they're traveling straight through the alley and then the other one turned left, it does still create that intersection. So I think the definition of intersection is open for interpretation here, but I still have some concerns on that one.
Okay, so they're withdrawing that one, though,
Is that
right?
one withdrawn, I thought?
They're withdrawing E.
They're withdrawing it, but she's still saying that.
They're withdrawing the waiver request.
They're withdrawing it, but not because they're modifying the intersection. They're withdrawing it because they're saying that it's not needed, but I'm not sure that the waiver isn't still needed.
Their interpretation tonight was that it's not needed, but we haven't had a chance to even digest that. It was just brought up tonight, so I think that's what the director's saying.
So as a
Even if it is needed, though, we have something that says staff recommendation is to approve the waiver. So even if they wanted the waiver, staff's recommending approval.
If they're going with private streets, then you can kind of go that way. But I think what we're saying too is, I feel a little uneasy about saying this is something that doesn't require a waiver. There's a process in requiring them to go through and ask for, hey, this is odd. And for us to say that this isn't odd is a little bit of a different kind of, it's a little bit of a procedural note.
So procedurally, then, if we were to table E, and would we be able to still take action on the plan with that item tabled to come back to it?
We'd have to conditionally work something out that we could discuss.
Yeah, I would just offer that if staff decides that a waiver is needed associated with this plan, we're going to have to come back to get it before we can do anything else. We don't think that we do, but we're happy to talk through that and come to a consensus.
Anthony, can you just explain again, just give it to me real quick, why you don't believe it's needed again?
Yeah, and it's hard to do this without the language of the ordinance in front of you. Oh, you got it? Okay.
Mr. Courtney.
Thanks, buddy.
I have to say something. I'm just sitting there. So the language says if a proposed street cannot intersect at the same location as a street on the other side of the cross street. So that's anticipating, right, where you can't have a four-way, right? Then you have to have a minimum offset of 150 feet, right? So you want to keep traffic sufficiently separated. But the requirement relates to a cross street. And so what we have on, I'm not going to move that screen, but basically that box, there's no cross street involved. There's no street on the other side of the cross street. It just goes in a kind of a box.
So essentially, if
It's not there, that's the problem.
No.
I
Yeah,
think that we're
It's right here. Yeah, it's,
You can point.
with what?
Take this and hit that pencil, and then you
All right.
can point where it is. There you go. Yep.
It's pure magic.
So right here, this is what we're talking about. So this section says that if a proposed street, obviously we're dealing with a proposed street, cannot intersect at the same location as a street on the other side of the cross street. So here, there's no street coming in
There
on
is,
this
though,
side.
there's an alley, and there's going to be several vehicles that are gonna be accessing off of it, so I think.
You're talking right here?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you were coming around that turn and a car was going straight, you could potentially have not enough time to react.
Do you need to erase it?
Erase it.
Trash can.
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
If you hit the trash can, it goes away automatically.
Yeah, it does.
I learned that earlier today.
I appreciate that, I appreciate that.
Hey, here's the thing though, because here's what we're talking about. One is they don't need the waiver, which from the definition, from a legal perspective, sounds like they absolutely don't need the waiver based on the language of the ordinance and a technical reading of it. But if they do need the waiver, staff's, like our sheet here that we have in our packet, that you've gone through each of these waivers, staff's recommendation is to approve the waiver. So, I mean, we can either not do it because they don't need it, or we can, in my mind, move to approve the waiver as staff has recommended and as they've presented. But I don't see, those are the two options I see. I don't see moving, like, the question is, if they don't need the waiver, then we cross it off, we don't bring it up tonight. If you're saying they do need the waiver, staff's already recommended approval, I'm satisfied with the explanation, we put a motion in and just vote on whether or not to approve the waiver. Is there a reason for the delay for not doing that tonight?
I think this kind of came up a little bit today, and we didn't have a whole lot of chance to react to the idea of it not being an intersection. And we were saying we may want to have an engineer look at that and say whether they think it is or isn't. We've had two engineers in the past review this, and they had different opinions. So
Yeah, so
that's
so
kind of
the
where we're
only
at.
thing I would say is, right, so we have this,
You gotta get that pencil. There you go.
we have this, right, and we have this.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't drafted as an intersection separation. So it's drafted where you have a cross street. So even if we're considering this alley a street for purposes of this provision, it's lined up with the cross street. You're getting that, it's directly opposing. But this is not drafted as a separation, as an intersection, that all street intersections shall be a minimum of 150 feet apart. It's not drafted that way. So I think Charter's just trying to keep everything moving. I'd be happy to concede on the issue of, the academic issue of whether a waiver is necessary and just treat it as something that where a waiver would be required. I'm okay with that because that seems to get us past a stumbling block. Again, the streets are going to be private. And it's an alley.
And they did agree to move the driveway, which also helps because it kind of would have created a little bit of a through situation there.
So in short, we can take it as a waiver, vote on it. If it's approved, we're good. If the board doesn't approve, then we have to have that conversation again. Okay.
Okay, when we get to that item, Commissioners, does everybody understand that well enough to feel confident taking action on that this evening?
Yes.
Okay, when we get to it, we'll deal with that one. I don't want to forget that. I think we'll start now at the top. So we'll be looking for action, potentially a motion to approve waiver from section 192-24.c requiring a preliminary plan be submitted.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Black, a second from Commissioner Kutz. Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, I'd be seeking a possible motion to approve waiver from section 192-57.b to B, requiring lots to have frontage and access to a private public street.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz.
And I'll second that with a question, just to confirm that from a public safety standpoint, this waiver doesn't cause any problems in terms of vehicle accessibility and so forth.
They have this condition in some of the other parts. As long as there's proper addressing, it shouldn't be an issue.
Thank you.
Does that satisfy you, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
I have a second from Commissioner Karen, and her question was answered satisfactory. Any further questions or any more discussion? I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-1. Did you get that, Ms. Secretary? Thank you. E.
D first.
Oh, thank you. C is what I meant. I have it crossed through it, so it looks like an E right now. E's, I'm just going to point out that that was a waiver that they've withdrawn. E, or C, excuse me. Yes, C. And now we'll go to D.
Mr. President, I'll move to approve the waiver, section 192-57C1, requiring 50 feet wide street right-of-way.
And I'll second that again and just renew my request for confirmation that from a public safety standpoint, that waiver does not cause any concerns in terms of vehicle accessibility.
No, it's, the cartway will still be the same as if it had been a 50-foot right-of-way.
Thank you.
Satisfied, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz, and I have a second from Commissioner Karen. Any further question or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Mr. President, on staff's recommendation, I'll move to approve waiver from section 193-57C6B3A1, requiring offsetting streets to be at least 150 feet from the closest intersection.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Black. Is there any discussion or questions?
I guess my question would be, are you still comfortable with the fact that this waiver can be approved, Director Tripp?
It doesn't meet the requirement of 150 feet, which is why they're asking for the waiver. I think, to their point, it's not a busy intersection, so I don't think it's going to be an extremely, dangerous kind of situation, but it is abnormal, is the way I would describe it. It was helpful for us. One of the reasons we were having issues with this section also had to do with snow removal. So when this became a discussion about having private streets, it became a more palatable conversation for staff.
So, okay. Commissioners, any further questions or comments? I have a motion and a second on the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any against?
No.
No. Motion fails.
I think it's 3-2. I think it's 3-2 positive.
No, it's the other way around.
I believe the motion failed.
It was 2-3.
I think you had 3 ayes, didn't you?
I thought you had 3 ayes and 2 nays.
Okay. I can call it again.
Or call a roll.
I'll call a roll call. Should I have the secretary do it or myself?
I would have the secretary.
The secretary.
President Malone,
Nay.
Vice President Black,
Aye.
Commissioner Karen,
No.
Commissioner Cutts?
Aye.
Commissioner Nagy?
No.
Motion failed 3-2. Next, we are going to skip F. They have withdrawn the waiver for F, and therefore I'd be seeking a motion to approve waiver from section 192-63.A3 requiring curbing to meet PennDOT publication 408 standards.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Black and second from Commissioner Cutts. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And then next, I'd be seeking a motion to approve SLD 2022-4 Arcona 8.2 with the following conditions. That the township has received the improvement guarantee and signed developers agreement. PennDOT records the HOP. Recreation and Parks Board comments have been adequately addressed. Recreation fees are received, and board acceptance of the overall master plan.
So since we got rid of the driveways couldn't be more than 40 feet from the intersection, I would think a condition for approval would need to be that revision is made. And then also a revision for the intersection there, the 150 feet of the closest intersection.
All right, Mr. President, I will take that as a motion to approve SLD 2022-04 Arcona 8.2 with the following conditions. Township has received the improvement guarantee and signed developers agreement. PennDOT records the HOP. Recreation and Park Board's comments have been adequately addressed. Recreation fees are received. Board acceptance of the overall master plan. Revision to reflect driveways being more than 40 feet from intersections, and resolution of the issue regarding a waiver for offsetting streets to be 150 feet from the closest intersection. I don't know if the resolution of the issue should also include a discussion with staff as to whether or not the waiver is needed. Possibly
Yeah,
consultation with engineer, whatever.
Yeah,
Is
that
that
can work too.
satisfactory?
Mhm.
Okay, that's the motion, Mr. President.
I'd like to make a second with another amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Cutts. I have a motion from Commissioner Cutts. I have a second, either with a comment or an additional amendment from Commissioner Nagy.
I'd like to
This is a motion on the floor. I don't think, I mean, it either has to be seconded or not seconded. Another motion made.
You have to withdraw the motion if you want to add an amendment. Correct.
Okay, so Commissioner Nagy, if you'd like, you can second the motion with a question, perhaps even a procedural question, and then withdraw if you'd like.
I'll just second it.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Cutts, a second from Commissioner Nagy. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to add in, take Mr. Friend Dietrich's opportunity to discuss with staff on snow removal. If we could put in some comments for placement, that way eliminate that as an issue for folks living there.
Mr. President, I will amend my motion to include conversation with charter staff and township staff regarding snow removal that will be conducted presumably by charter. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and ask Commissioner Nagy if his second will still stand on that motion.
I still second.
Terrific. I have a motion from Commissioner Cutts and a second from Commissioner Nagy, all as amended appropriately and recorded that way. Any further discussion or any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
Great, thank you.
Moving on to public safety.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and then handle that. Our fleet manager, Mr. Reynolds, is here also to discuss the board. There was a memo in your packet regarding the purchase of police cars. These cars are in our 5-year plan. They are scheduled for replacement in 2023, but as Charlie can tell you, he's had some discussions with the sellers, and they're getting both expensive and hard to come by, delivery-wise. So the request is that even though the budget for 2023 hasn't been approved yet, we grant staff permission, or you grant staff permission, to order those vehicles with the note from the provider that we can withdraw the purchase without penalty if the budget for them is not approved. So Charlie, do you want to go ahead and talk about your discussion with the vendor?
Yeah, I'm talking to the vendor, as Tom pointed out, the cars are getting pretty hard to get. And discussing with them, the CoStar's discount is starting to phase out in all the major suppliers. So to take advantage of that CoStar's discount for this year, I recommend we do this. Plus, as in March, as my memo stated, the price of the cars went up $7,000 just from March, just for the supplier issues. So in order to save that, to save the money, we act now to order those cars with the understanding from the dealer that we can, they can sit on them till January 1st when the invoices be printed, and we can back out for some reason the budget did not get passed. It's just the suppliers with the, we all heard that the chip problems, and across the board it's just getting terrible to find any type of vehicle out there. So I'm asking for pre-approval on those cars. We can get them now, and that we don't have to wait. Because if we ordered them, even if we could in January, we probably will not see them until July.
First of all, thank you, Charlie, for putting that memo together for us. It was well explained, I thought, and certainly thanks for waiting through almost 3 hours of meeting to share that with us again. So thank you for being here with us tonight. And but commissioners, I'll just open it up for any questions at this point.
Mr. President, I just had one. I do want to thank staff for being proactive with finding an economic benefit for the township, so I greatly appreciate that. This question is more for Solicitor Minor, just in terms of, I know we have an email in writing from the dealership, essentially with respect to not having any penalty if we were to back out. Do you recommend us putting anything more formal in writing with respect to that agreement, just to protect the township, or do you think this would suffice if that would need to be enforced?
I think it would suffice. I mean, I think you've got exchange of emails. I think we have a contract.
And with that, I would make a motion.
Second.
To approve that.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Karen and a second from Commissioner Kutz as laid out to give staff approval to make this order conditionally on, of course, as it's been explained, approval of our upcoming budget for these items that are also in our overall, our master five-year capital plan. I guess that's where they're sitting. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or any questions?
Well, as I understand the other condition, Charlie, is the dealer says they may come in before the end of the year. They will hold them. And if that happens, they're going to be a coveted item. Other units are going to be after them.
Well, our name is actually, that they're reserved for us right now.
I know, yeah.
So that's why I wanted to act now.
So the dealer is cutting us a real deal.
Yes, they are. Exactly.
We buy a lot of cars from them.
Was that it, Commissioner? You satisfied?
That's it.
Any other questions or any more discussion?
Just thanks for being proactive.
Yes.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Let's just hope if they come in early, there's not a bunch of cops over there trying to pick the locks.
Thank you.
Unless it's ours. We may have to have a directed detail.
Woo. Moving along here. To the manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. First item I have on there tonight, hang on, I got myself turned down there. Okay, first item I have on the agenda is a discussion and possible action for the approval of a resolution which would be permitting the encroachment into the public right-of-way of the now privately owned Sheepford Road Bridge, otherwise known as Bridge 257. This was a request by York County of the West Shore Historical Society. Ms. Lynx is here with us tonight. They requested this. They're the ones that got the loan, or the grant for the refurb of the bridge. And before they released the money, they wanted some assurance that the local municipalities, both us and Fairview, were okay with this privately owned bridge encroaching on our road. Thank goodness we don't have to do resolutions every time somebody wants to build a new house and put in a driveway. But that's where we're at with that. We drafted something up here to answer your questions. I'm sure Janice will be happy to answer your questions as well if you have
Ms.
them.
Lynch, you want to just give us a quick update on this? Thank you for being here.
Janice Lynx, 2036 Sheepford Road, and Executive Director of the West Shore Historical Society. Tom is right. The counties are requesting this resolution both from Lower Allen and from Fairview. One minor correction, the bridge is not yet privately owned and won't be privately owned until the completion of the rehabilitation project. We are working on our second agreement with the counties. The first one was withdrawn almost immediately and did not have anything about the resolution in it. But the second agreement that we're negotiating now had the request for the resolution. And I jokingly said, I hope I don't have to be the one to try to explain right of way at a public meeting. But I'm told that because we will be owning the bridge, that there's a chance that it will encroach on your right of way. And that's why, in this case, it seems like the county is actually looking out for the society as the future owners. So I thank Tom for the time he put into this. We did ask for a draft of a resolution. We didn't receive one. So I'm sure what he came up with will be acceptable. I'm not going to take time now because you guys have been here for a long time, but if anyone at any time wants an update on where we actually are with the project, I'm happy to supply that. We did have a very big meeting on August 8th. I was under the assumption that you were informed of that meeting when PennDOT and the State Historic Preservation Office came down to the bridge to make the plans for how it's going to be rehabilitated. I'm not sure that happened, but I promise that the next time I'm notified of a meeting, I will make sure to notify you. So that's the best I could do right now. Happy to share more information after the meeting, emails, whatever, anything I can do. And thank you.
Thank you for being here and sharing that. Thanks. So Commissioners, we'd be looking at this resolution tonight as some action. So I'd be seeking a motion to approve this resolution if possible.
Mr. President, move to approve Resolution 2022-R-28.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz, a second from Commissioner Nagy. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. The second item I have on there, the state recently passed, I'm going to forget the number, 57?
Act 57.
I think it's 57, Act 57, which addresses tax discounts and late penalties for recently sold or new properties that didn't receive a tax notification. We'll let the solicitor talk more about it, but all I understand is it's something that we have to adopt, I think, at some point. So we did he drafted up an ordinance, and we're staff seeking tonight permission to advertise for that ordinance. But Steve, do you want to give the board some background on this?
Yeah, I don't know. It was a bundle of legislation that came down on July 11th. It really looks like a solution in search of a problem, but I guess it occasionally happens. And, you know, what it ameliorates is the person that didn't pay on time doesn't have to pay the late fee. They pay the base amount. But you do have to enact an ordinance, so you give the power for your tax collector to make that waiver. And we have time. The statute itself is not effective until October 9th. It was enacted on July 11th, and we have 60 days thereafter. So we'll fall well within that time. And I know the tax collectors aren't wild about this because it's creating work for them, but it is something that we are required to do. So we need to enact this resolution, and we need to advertise it first. So at this point, we're looking for motion for advertising.
So we, even though we have a little time on this, I don't see any reason to delay getting this moving. So I would seek a motion tonight, unless any commissioner feels like they need some more time on this item.
Is there any other ordinances coming up just through staff otherwise that we'd have to be advertising that we can do together in the near future, or anything else?
Sorry, what was the question?
Are there going to be additional ordinances coming up that we can save costs by advertising together? Not that I'm aware of.
I'm not aware of any.
And this isn't going to require a hearing, right?
No, it's general legislation.
Mr. President, I'll move to authorize staff to advertise ordinance 2022-04.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kutz, a second from Commissioner Karen. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. The third item I have is discussion and possible action. You received in your packet a copy of the West Shore Recreation Commission's 2023 budget and their request for their per capita fee. And I will point out that the per capita fee itself has not changed. It is still $3 per person. However, for the first time, they're using the 2020 census numbers, which increased around 18, I forget, less than 2,000 people, but we're up over 20,000 now. So the dollar amount has changed.
Tom, I'm curious, does that per capita contribution include population at SCI Camp Hill?
No, specifically excluded. Yeah.
Okay.
So just to confirm, the rate is staying the same. It's just the number's going up
$3
only because of the.
$3 per resident.
Got it.
I'll make a motion to approve the West Shore Recreation Commission's 2023 budget and Lower Island's per capita rate of $3.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Karen, a second from Commissioner Nagy. Any discussion?
I would just like to add that I really think the West Shore Recreation Commission does a great job of putting on programs, and I found them to be very, very valuable and very worthwhile from my personal perspective. So just wanted to make note of that.
Thanks.
Sounds like we found our next liaison.
Yes. That's why I said
Sign me
thanks, because I'm keeping that one banked.
There you go.
Any other discussion or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Finally, as you're probably aware, you saw in the newspaper, legislature did allow changes to Act 74. The solicitor provided a summary in a letter dated July 26th for the board. It could be a long discussion or a short discussion, I'm not sure, but I know the board or various commissioners have made comments in the past about Act 74 and what it wrought on the community. Now, the legislature is allowing changes to that, although I don't know that how helpful the changes are. But frankly, Steve, did you want to?
I just had, and just Tom misspoke, this is amendments to Act 43 of 2017. But really, the taxation is still there. The primary difference is municipalities can require permits for consumer fireworks, which I think the manager and I really don't recommend that. I think would be a bad decision, and I think it's going to be very tough to enforce and a lot of extra work for your staff. But there are some provisions that allow you to set some time limits by ordinance outside the traditional holidays like Labor Day and 4th of July, Memorial Day, and New Year's Eve. That you may want to do. I mean, but it's sort of, you know, if anyone's expecting a repeal of Act 43, it's very disappointing, and it really mirrors what we had before, other than those hour restrictions are now permissible by ordinance, and you could actually permit the use of consumer fireworks, which I think are pretty significant changes, but I haven't seen any municipalities do it yet, so, and I certainly don't recommend it. But I answer any questions if I can.
Commissioners?
Again, the flurry of stuff on July 11th, so it was an interesting grab bag this year.
Right.
So Steve, basically, the only worthwhile change we could make would be to restrict the time to 10 p.m. And arguably the noise ordinance means they're in theory restricted starting at 11 p.m. But
Right.
it would allow us to basically move that up to 10.
Yeah, and I think if perhaps, you know, you get that in your newsletter on the website, you may get some cooperation. I think it may help the police, but the problem always is if you have an offender, by the time the police are called, I mean, you know, they've moved on. So that's why, you know, I think it may make some sense, but, you know, and again, not looking, you know, necessarily for guidance tonight. As the manager said, it's, you know, the first time you've had a chance to look at it. If I feel strongly though about this time restriction, I think you're not going to make Labor Day, but maybe your next, you know, major holiday with noise is going to be New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve.
So between then, I think, because you clearly can't do it before Labor Day, you certainly could do it before New Year's Eve, so you may want to think about it.
And I think the input of the public safety director and the police captain is probably important, because whatever restrictions you create have to be enforced. And it's, as the solicitor said, it's very difficult to enforce these things because, again, locating them, having somebody complain, and then expecting them to still be there when you show up is you know, it's kind of a crapshoot. I don't know, did you guys have anything to add?
No, it's difficult. Neighbors call, but until an officer gets there, when they're handling multiple complaints and multiple fireworks, a lot of times they've already shot them off and they've gone back into their residence, or there's nobody there. And then you have to make sure that you've identified the fact that they fired them within the distance that was, you know, they were not allowed to. So it's problematic to enforce, but we certainly would take a look at it.
Short of a drone, how are you going to find out if someone's launching area is 150 feet from an occupied structure or 125 feet?
Yeah, because you'd have to have the evidence to support that if you prosecuted them, and they took a hearing.
If you get lucky, you can walk up on them while they're still doing it, but somebody always sees the car coming and yells, you know.
Well, the one problem area we've had in the past shoots them off way in their backyard. So even with, you know, I saw, I think, 3 patrol cars on the street outside the home, but because it's a big lot and it's all the way in the back of the lot, you couldn't easily tell if it was 150 feet. So you had, you know, issues there, but.
We just wanted to start the discussion tonight to see if the board was interested in any of these changes that we could incorporate. Obviously, I think we'd have to do an ordinance to repeal or to amend our previous ordinance. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's going to be taking a look at what value there is for, let's say, an hour and maybe a couple other holidays, I just think the whole law, it's unfortunate, and I know everything's gonna have a consequence. I can just imagine, I don't know what staffing's like overnight, but that's when fireworks are being shot off. And then, we're looking at, adding time and officers' time and perhaps staff later on. The whole thing's unfortunate. I would, at this point, say we think about it and maybe come back at a later meeting and revisit it, perhaps sometime this fall before New Year's, which would be the next probably big time you were talking about, right? Is everybody good with that? We kind of just back off of it and give our thoughts maybe to management. Great, super. All right. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. So before commissioner reports, is there a need to go into the executive session tonight?
Yes, there is, but no action will be taken, so you can adjourn.
Okay, and
What's the
what's
general
the topic?
I'm sorry, it's a personnel matter.
Personnel, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Yep. All right.
it's actually grievance.
So after commissioner reports, we will adjourn this evening to executive session. So we'll start with Director Trone. Nothing this evening? Nothing more to add? Director Hall?
I know it's been a long evening, just run something real quick, and Mr. Kutz would be interested in this. I drafted the MOU with the school district for the SRO position. It was, we reviewed it internally with the police department, and then I sent it to the superintendent. They've reviewed it internally, and now they're requesting a meeting at some point. It's going to be scheduled for us to sit down. Fairview's on board with it as well. It was sent to them, and they reviewed it for their position. But the last, I guess, an email from Todd, superintendent, last week, and basically he said that the district is still on board with an SRO in each high school, probably starting in fall of '23. We don't think we can get it either in their budget or advanced with us. So we've already agreed to sat down with the district and have an SRO picked for the department. So you'll see some things in the budget for backfill, probably proposed coming up in the fall. But it's now getting closer to reality than it was. We just have to dot the i's and cross the t's moving forward.
What costs is there going to be in our budget for it?
The proposal is that the district would reimburse the township 75% of the position, and the township would pick up 25. That's fairly common.
So that's the normal one, but that doesn't take into account the $640,000 appropriation that was given to them specifically for school safety and school resource officers that were included in the budget, so that there would be no cost to anyone because the state's footing the bill.
If that is applied, and that's what's agreed to, absolutely. So we suggested if there is no money, that it's a 75-25 split. But if they're going to pick up the whole, and ultimately what would happen is if they pick up that whole, the whole freight on it up front, and it gets to the point where there is no more of that money, it would be the 75-25. So that's what was in the proposal, or not proposal, but the MOU.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to see they're starting to come around after 4 years of discussions on how important it is to protect our children in school. I'm sure glad they're finally taking it seriously. So thank you for all the work there.
Sure. The superintendent said that he anticipates taking it to the school board in September at one of their meetings.
For the memorandum?
Yes.
Okay.
And it'll be coming to the board at some point as well here.
Perfect. Sooner the better.
Super. Thanks, Director. Solicitor Minor?
I have nothing, and I'll point out that the executive session has nothing to do with legal.
Okay. Good. You're just there to keep us in line, and you do a good job of it. Director Davis?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Eby? Director Roby, you've just been hanging out over there this evening, been able to take it all in. It's been great. Anything this evening? Nothing. No? Okay, Commissioner Nagy?
Just want to follow up kind of on our Arcona discussions and, moving towards the future here. A lot of my thoughts on this are all not necessarily even a now thought, but a, 10, 20 years from now view for our residents. The snow removal, some of these other odds and end things I can easily see becoming a headache for both the future residents of Arcona and future boards that sit up here. I think it would be responsible for us to try to tackle these issues now while we have a chance, instead of having, a future commissioners, future staff trying to mediate issues up there in the future. So I just want to try to hope that we can keep working and the staff doing what they've been doing so far to keep things moving forward in the interest of our residents. Regarding Lisburn, I'm sure many folks will say more about the festival, but I just want to thank all the volunteers out there at the Lisburn Fire Company, as well as festival volunteers. And thank our mutual aid fire companies, including the Lower Island Township Fire Company, for providing standby up there during their multiple emergency calls.
Thank you. Commissioner Kutz?
Thank you, Mr. President. Two quick things. First, actually, for Dave, why the delay till fall of 2023?
Because it's, I think it's be budget. One of the things for us is going to be that we would have to backfill the position. So the soonest that we could begin doing that, if we had to send somebody to the academy, would be January. Okay. If it's an Act 120, it could be sooner, but it would. I don't know how we would get it done first or second quarter, the beginning of 23, and we don't have. There's no funds right now unless it be the 100%, which I don't know what the district has, or that's not been shared.
$640,000 from the state is what they have. Earmarked for school.
It's not been shared with us, so I don't know if maybe there's a push somewhere else that could happen to do that. But we're not privy to that information from them.
But for us, it's a staffing thing that.
For us, it's a staffing
we
thing.
We would have to go down a person and backfill.
Correct.
So it's more beneficial to the township to be able to,
Yeah,
excellent.
and the first academy that's going to come is going to be the January academy, and that's 6 months. So you're at the end of the school year anyhow until we would get that position. If we had to do that, if it's not an Act 120 person, we could hire.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. And then very briefly, Mr. President, also in the Lisburn Festival, it was wonderful having all 5 commissioners there to take part in the festivities, to volunteer and give back a little bit. What a great event and community organization out there. I was saying to Commissioner Nagy and Karen while we were standing there, this is just an exceptional operation. I don't think I realized it until I was walking around. I saw all the orange shirts that said volunteer on it. And you just realized, I think in the past I thought, a lot of these are vendor staff, they're making money on it. And you look at all the booths and they're volunteers from the community there. And it is so neat to see the community rally around the fire company there. What they do to partake in the fundraising side of things, to support their company, to support their festival. It is a neat opportunity, neat event. And it was wonderful just talking and meeting to so many people. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I told Brian I'd be back every year. So just go ahead and sign me up in wherever they need me. But I thought it was really cool just to see so many people, not only from the staff, but the public safety folks. Tony's out there all night helping out, teaching people about, 4-minute city and all that. And it's neat to see the whole community take part in it. So I really enjoyed it. Just hats off to Lisburn. And if Brian were here, I'd ask him how many days till festival. So thank you, Mr. President. That's all.
All right. Commissioner Karen.
I would echo all of those same sentiments. My kids are also asking how many more days till festival because they actually volunteered in some of the games and had a blast on 2 of the nights there as well. So yes, it was a great opportunity to be part of the community, and the volunteers did a fabulous job. So I have nothing else besides that.
Great. Vice President Black.
I never carried out so much trash in my life.
I heard you were heaving it,
Got the big job.
That dumpster was high. And there was a lot of detail discussed tonight, and I want to thank everybody who took the time to stay and make sure that we had an understanding. So I thank you very much to everybody. And that's it.
Thank you. Any of the captains?
I forgot an hour ago.
Okay, we're just going to do that as a token. You're good. See us after the meeting. I'll just reiterate the festival festivities out at Lisburn. The preliminary numbers seem to be that probably a record year for them by a pretty good margin, and I would imagine, based on some of the information I have, that there's probably room to grow from there. The stars lined up really well, but like some folks have pointed out, it takes a big effort, and the organization out there works. It's a well-greased machine out there, and I would say on the fire side, that seems to be the same case, but on the social side and the fundraising side. So kudos to all the people out there, and thanks. All the commissioners came out this year. We had some good times. We worked hard, and I'll just point out a couple things. Commissioner Karen's kids the second night, they just came running up. I was like, road runner, come stop them real quick, and the dust following behind. Where do we go? Like, what game? When's the game open so we can go help? Because they had so much fun the night before. So I would say get involved with the Lisburn Fire Company. They're on the move. That's what I would say. But yes, Vice President Black was out there in the dining room moving trays and a lot of trash out of the cans. That was very good. And Commissioner Kutz was getting his hand dirty. And at some point, I'm just going to call you out a little bit, Commissioner Nagy. He wound up in the kitchen for much of the night scrubbing the pots and pans with the president of the fire company out there, Steve Trimmer. And so I imagine you had some awesome conversations with the kitchen crew, as well as your grandmother-in-law came out, and she wound up serving bread, I think, out of the kitchen. And it was just an overall great time. So I would encourage everybody, if you have the time next year, find out when the festival is, and just inquire with me if you'd like, or over there at the fire company if you want to volunteer one night. It's really a good time. And thanks, the captains, for your help out there too. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, it's August 9th through the 12th of 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner. Great. I'm glad you liked it a lot. I did. He did. He had a good time. So I know it's late and I'm tired, but it's been a long meeting, but I do want to bring this up, and I want to preface it with this. Is staff has to know, and all of our employees and everybody, that this board right now, as well as the boards I've been sitting on up until now, value staff in so many ways, and we think what's going on in Lower Township is all just really excellent, and I can't thank you from myself, but I'm sure on behalf of the entire board, how much work that you put in and how much time and effort you put in to every aspect of running this township, from public safety, public works, development, and all of that, but particularly keeping us up here in the know and managing, 5 personalities coming at you with different things and stuff like that. So grateful for all of it. But I'd be remiss not to start talking about and being vigilant about what the needs are going to be for the board going forward with regard to information. I mean, we've got a board right now that the information flow between meetings is incredible. I mean, they're asking me, they're counting on me in many cases for information, and there's a lot of respect going on too, where they'll call and say, hey, do you have information on this, rather than just bugging staff. And often I'm coming in and asking questions through Tom normally, or directly to one of the directors or managers when it's appropriate, to get information, and then passing it back. So we've got a very respectful flow here going on with the board. I would say now's the time, if any, to start talking about maybe getting some information to us just a little earlier. We've had a traditional time frame of Friday evenings getting our packets, and I would say with as much time as every board member here wants to put into the issues, And what I foresee as down the road here, the types of issues we're going to get into, whether it's talking about zoning changes or zoning updates, and then moving on with whatever redevelopment plans we have, and the controversies that might come along with that. I think the Tommy's car wash issue was a good example of that, just trying to understand what's going on. I think getting input from the board and the different members who are very cautiously asking about this, because we all don't want to put undue stress on staff, but I think as a whole, I'm getting the sense that we could use at least one extra day, possibly more than that, or a type of system where we can get some information on some of the things earlier that we know, that maybe you know are gonna be coming at us, so that when the last minute things come, we have maybe more than one business day to process those or ask questions. Because sometimes what happens, and this is no fault to public safety or anybody like that, sometimes we don't get our packets until Saturday or Saturday night. And I realize the SharePoint, it comes out, and that's been a great tool. But I think if I do rely more on the physical right now packet, and I appreciate that. I can go through the SharePoint. I still struggle with the computer stuff. So even for me, if I'm going to be away on a weekend, I only really have Monday to come in, and I'm pretty available and make time. But there's commissioners on the board here that have expressed things to me that maybe they are busy on a Monday and they don't have time to process things appropriately. So I just open the discussion up, and this isn't just solely coming from me. And I think now is the time to start talking about it, if there's anything we can do to help that. And I'll just leave it with this, Tom, for what I'm going to say about it right now until we talk about it, is I talked to, and this, again, I'm not trying to put something on you, but have you heard of Novo Agenda? I think it's called Novo or Novo.
Yeah,
there's something like that. President Silcox over at Hampton said that's been a helpful tool, and said if you're interested in talking to Keith about that, that's something that their commissioners have access to, that the management builds the agenda. They don't, and then anything, the agenda gets finalized at a certain date. But that was just something he said you'd be welcome to talk to Keith about, if that's an avenue or something like that. Having said that, I'm just going to open it up to the board, because I don't believe I'm speaking for myself only tonight.
I mean, I'll admit at least one more day would be helpful, just to be able to get in and get access to talk to staff and try to, essentially for me, it's learning more. It's, rarely about an issue with things. It's more about learning about them and getting a chance to coordinate with someone's schedule, getting in to talk with them. I would be very much in support of it.
Doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also would be very much in support of just an extra business day, even if we had Friday, with even preliminary agenda items that we could take a look at, even if we know something maybe larger is coming later in the day, Friday, at least we'd have a business day. I do work full time, so it would just be nice to have something other than Monday to connect with other commissioners or staff or anyone that I need to chat, and it's mostly what Commissioner Nagy is saying. It's just to be able to better understand and comprehend what's before us and what's included in our packets. So just even one more day would be beneficial, but I would like to just open the dialogue to understand what the constraints would be with that request on the staff.
And I would add, I would agree, an extra day would be great. I know I've actually moved the table a couple things on Monday evening because I hadn't had a chance to really feel like I got an understanding. So I think getting them Thursday would be an awesome win.
Any comments, Commissioner Blunt?
I'd like to hear the manager's response to that. Can you have everything together, Tom?
Yes, you can have the information whenever you like. The curveball that Act 65 threw us is that, and what I would suggest is getting, and I think somebody said preliminary, I think Commissioner Karen said preliminary agenda. We can get you something on Thursday that is substantially complete. But a lot of times things come in on Friday, last minute stuff. And that's one of the reasons we wait until, Friday afternoon to send the agenda out. We could do one of two things. Either the agenda is finalized on Thursday, and whatever comes in on Friday, too bad, it waits for the next agenda. Or we can send you a substantially completed agenda with packets and then still not finalize the agenda by publishing it until Friday. So anything that comes in on Friday that would be added to the agenda late would of course be sent to you. My only concern is if we send CSOs around with packets on Thursday night to deliver them, are we going to ask them to come back out again on Friday to deliver some extra backup, or will an electronic version be sufficient?
Well, a one-piece electronic, a couple things would be really good. That would be good for me. That'd be fine. I'm not saying I have to be, but the main meat of the packet, I usually look in the hard copy. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't happen very often. Mostly we usually have it done. Just have to press staff a little bit to make sure they get everything to us by Thursday noon, which is not unusual because there's a lot of times now when either we're closed on a Friday or I'm on vacation or I'm leaving or whatever, that we ask them to have it by Thursday. So it's not unusual or difficult.
Okay. So the one day won't you don't feel will cause any problems for any, okay.
No.
If the commissioners, if you feel that will do the trick right now, I think that would suffice.
That would be wonderful. We just want to make sure it didn't cause any problems from the staffing perspective. But that would be wonderful. So appreciate that.
Yeah, but I just want to reiterate that we are so grateful, and we're all really interested in what's going on in the township and making the best possible decisions we can make along with staff's recommendations, because we count on you to guide us in everything. And I'll also say again that the narratives that have been coming have been just so great, and it's so helpful. It really is. Just I respect that kind of demand, that need right now, I'll say, from the board as a whole to have a little extra time processing all of it, because we got a lot of information that's coming. So great, super.
The only thing that I would request is that the final packet is the one that's delivered by the community service officers.
That's difficult because you're looking for all that information by Thursday. That's not the final packet, or it will be a lot of the times, but what we're saying is there's only going to be one packet delivered by the CSOs.
Right.
Okay. If anything is added to the agenda on Friday, it'll be sent to you electronically, and you'll have a paper copy at your place on Monday. But we're not going to send a CSO back out to deliver one or two pieces of paper.
And I'm not saying that. I think the CSO should make the delivery Friday evening like they do now. And that's the final agenda.
They're going to be making the delivery on Thursday. That's the only way.
Why don't we get the Thursday edition electronically?
That's up for you all to discuss. I think what I heard from a couple of commissioners is they prefer the paper copies.
I do as well. I only view the SharePoint on my township iPad to avoid pitfalls former Secretary of States have had about viewing on personal devices. So I have a small, tiny screen, so I prefer the paper. If it were me, I would say just close it Thursday, Act 65 it on Thursday for the agenda, so the public gets another day to see it, and just do everything a day early. It's 2 weeks between meetings. If there's anything, I don't know that there's anything that is that precedent. Hey, you didn't get it. Okay, agenda's already out. You can't wait 2 weeks. it's not like Hampton does a monthly meeting, other townships do monthly meetings, so it's a little different for them. I think with 2 weeks, there's a lot of stuff that's just, hey, if it's late on Friday, we already put the agenda out and get it on Thursday, can wait 2 weeks. So I would be in favor of saying, just shut it off Thursday, just shift everything up 24 hours. So approve the agenda Thursday, send out the final agenda Thursday night, and then if anything comes in Friday, that goes on the next agenda 2 weeks from now. That would be my vote.
I don't have any problem with what Thomas is saying, not at all. What I'm saying is, I look at SharePoint, I'll do that Thursday, but I'd like the official edition to be the one delivered in hard copy.
Okay, and that would be accomplished by what Commissioner Kutz is saying, just finalize it on Thursday.
It's just a day early, that's all. And if we have something come in late, we take it 2 weeks from now.
And there are exceptions under Act 65 on things that we can add. And just like we do now, if there's something that comes in late that you didn't get in your packet, it'll be at your place when you come in on Monday for the meeting. And so, it doesn't, I think that's a good solution. We just end it on Thursday. Anything that comes in late, if it falls under one of the exceptions, we'll include it. If it doesn't, it waits to the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.